Chapter 1184. After when Rui left, Zhang Peng looked at his master in confusion. He felt that this was not his master's character. He didn't know if his master had other plans, so he approached and asked, "Master, are you really going to let him leave here alone?" What he meant was the old rule. If it was inconvenient for him to be the bad guy, then he would be the scapegoat. He was used to being the scapegoat anyway, so he didn't mind taking one more. For example, Nongzhu almost fell out with him last time because of the Jasper Flower Fairy. However, Zhang Peng was now in power and decisive. His millions of troops only needed an order to attack immediately. Zhang Peng's face darkened, and Nongzhu couldn't do anything to him. After all, he wasn't Yu Qianqiu and he wasn't familiar with him. He wouldn't give him a chance to scold and order him around. Zhang Peng was ready to get rid of Wenrui as long as Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu, who was standing with his hands behind his back, thought of the Snow Empress and her husband in the Great Snow Mountain. He shook his head slightly and sighed, "Let him go. After all, they are all acquaintances in the human world. I don't want to lose the last bit of old affection." He really didn't want to gain more and lose more. He sighed with emotion and a rare compassion. Zhang Peng had grown up on the battlefield and was used to living on the edge of a knife. His understanding of soft-heartedness was even more thorough than his master's. Once he discovered someone who was dangerous to the overall situation, he wouldn't even blink when he saw blood splattering everywhere. He frowned and said, "What if he leaks the location of our base after leaving?" "So what?" Yu Qianqiu, who was facing the wall in deep thought, turned around and said confidently, "The base is in the ruins of God. Even if Sanyi knows we are inside, what can he do to us? The ruins of God is still too early to open. I don't think they can do anything to us. Besides, if Wenrui is really a disloyal person, keeping him around is more dangerous than letting him go." Yes, this disciple understands. If there is nothing else, this disciple will take his leave. Zhang Peng respectfully retreated. Although he appeared to be obeying, he still felt that something was wrong. For him, as the commander of an army, if he did not plan for the overall situation, he would not be able to plan for a region, and if he did not plan for 10,000 generations, he would not be able to plan for a moment. This was also what his master had told him, and he had always believed it. Therefore, he had to be ready to deal with unexpected events at any time. Moreover, the world of cultivation was different from the mortal world. There were countless strange things happening and nothing was absolute. If there was an emergency and he didn't handle it well, then he would be derelict in his duty. However, he still obeyed his master's decision unconditionally. However, he was prepared to make the best preparations within the scope of his authority. He decided to adjust the defense of the army so that he would not be caught off guard if an accident happened. Not long after Zhang Peng left, Nongzhu burst in again. As soon as she saw Yu Qianqiu, she pounded the table and yelled, "Yu Qianqiu, what do you mean? What's wrong? Why are you throwing such a tantrum? Who provoked you?" Yu Qianqiu pretended not to know the answer. "Cut it out. Don't tell me you don't know about Qianghua." Nongzhu told him what had happened. It turned out that after Qianghua Fairy was taken away by Zhang Peng, Qianghua Fairy told Ziyi that they were mother and daughter when he was in a coma. Now Ziyi looked sad when she saw him and ignored him. How could such a thing happen? Yu Qianqiu was surprised. He spread out his hands and said, "I really don't know. I'm sure it has nothing to do with me." "Bullshit." Nongzhu kicked over the chair and pointed at Yu Qianqiu's nose. She scolded, "No one else knows about the thing between me and Qianghua except you. It's no wonder that you didn't instruct her. Now Ziyi doesn't care about me anymore. If you don't solve this problem, I won't let you go." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand with a solemn expression, indicating that he really wasn't the one who ordered this. Suddenly he frowned and said, "I understand. I told Zhang Peng about your relationship with Fairy Jade Flower and asked him to take care of Fairy Jade Flower. Actually, I had good intentions. Later you were injured, so I asked Zhang Peng to arrange a careful woman to take care of you. Did that bastard take Qianghua Fairy to you?" "You." Nongzhu pointed at him and didn't know what to say. She also didn't know whether this guy was telling the truth or not. Although she felt that it was reasonable and could be true, she knew Yu Qianqiu too well. She always believed only 30% of the words that came out of his mouth. "Don't be angry. It really has nothing to do with me. Of course, I won't shirk my responsibility. I'll give you a satisfactory explanation." Yu Qianqiu walked over with a gloomy face and a faint murderous intent. He said in a low voice, "That Qianghua Fairy is so hateful. We can't vent our hatred if we don't teach her a lesson. How about this? I'll personally talk to Ze and tell her that Jasper Flower Fairy is a person with ulterior motives. I'll let Zhang Ping deal with the trouble he caused. I'll let Zhang Ping use military law to pry open her mouth and make her beg for death. I guarantee that she'll personally tell Ze that she lied to her before. What do you think? Nongzhu was speechless. He sensed Yu Qianzhou's killing intent and did not doubt that this cruel and merciless guy would kill Qianghua Fairy. But to be honest, after all, they had been husband and wife for one night. Nongzhu did not want to torture Qianghua Fairy to the point where she begged for death. But he still said stubbornly, "Keep pretending." Then he swung his sleeves and left. Alas! Don't go. Yu Qianzhou chased after him and shouted, "I'm telling the truth. If you don't believe me, I'll tell Zhang Ping first. If you want, you can ask Zhang Ping to deal with it. Get out of here." Nongzhu turned around and spat on his face, then left. Yu Qianzhou wiped the spittle off his face and hummed a Beijing opera song. I was watching the mountain scenery from the tower when I heard the chaos outside the city. Flags fluttered in the air, but it turned out to be the soldiers sent by General Sima. With his hands behind his back, he walked back proudly. In the main bedroom of the backyard of the passionless palace in the mystic immortal city, a woman's blood-boiling moan kept ringing. Sometimes it was low, sometimes it was loud and clear. After the violent crash, the muscular, naked Demon King 3 Knights lay down on the bed in a relaxed manner. The Demon King's charming eyes were like silk as she stretched out her curvaceous and proud white body. After cleaning the Demon King 3 Knights, she laid down on his chest and asked softly, "Demon King, you're a good girl. I heard news from the underworld that Bai Qi has gone missing. What's going on?" "He's looking for trouble. When the time comes, don't blame me for breaking my promise." The Demon King of 3 Knights' eyes flickered. He raised his hand and lifted the goose egg-like white chin on his chest. He smiled faintly and said, "Could it be that you're sleeping next to me but you're thinking of Bai Qi? The two of you seem to have loved each other to death. Could it be that you still have feelings for him?" The Demon King of Azure Sky pushed his hand away and lay back on the bed. She snorted coldly and said, "I've already cut off all ties with him. If it wasn't for the Demon King's promise, just because he sealed me in the demon realm for so many years, I would have torn him to pieces." It was only when they were on the bed that she dared to make a move on the Demon King of 3 Knights. The Demon King of 3 Knights gave a non-committal, "Oh." Suddenly Eunuchly knocked on the door and shouted, "Demon King." The Demon King of 3 Knights pushed the Demon King of Azure Sky away and got off the bed. The Demon King of Azure Sky hurriedly got up and helped him put on his armor and cloak. He watched as the Demon King of 3 Knights strode out. Then he slowly took a few steps back and sat on the bed with his butt bare. He seemed to have lost something. Suddenly he heard the conversation outside mention Yan Zhuixing. He immediately came to his senses and quickly put on his clothes. In the courtyard outside, the Demon King of 3 Knights suddenly turned around and asked. He said he came from the human realm and just escaped from the hands of the ruins of God realm Yu Qianzhou. He's Vice Palace Lord Yan's servant? Eunuchly bowed slightly and said, "Yes. I've checked. He was indeed affected by the demon eye ecstasy. It shouldn't be fake. All the passages leading to the human realm have been cut off. I thought that Yu Qianzhou wanted to stay in the human realm and not interfere with the matters of our demonic path army. I didn't think that he would actually hide in the ruins of God realm." The Demon King of 3 Knights sneered and said, "Bring that person to see me. Also, bring Vice Palace Lord Yan over to confront him." Eunuchly quickly left and brought Yan Zhuixing and Wen Rui over not long after. Yan Zhuixing had already recovered to his original state. He had suffered a great loss in the demon realm and had his physical body destroyed. If not for the miraculous demonic arts and the 3 Knights and the others helping him find a suitable body to take over, he probably wouldn't have recovered so quickly. As for Wen Rui, because he had long been controlled by Yan Zhuixing's demon eye, after thinking of ways to get Yu Qianzhou to be sent out of the ruins of God realm, he immediately found the people of the demon realm and declared that he was Yan Zhuixing's subordinate. When the people of the demon realm heard that he was Vice Palace Lord Yan's subordinate, they didn't dare to delay and immediately arranged for him to be sent over to verify. When the master and servant met, Yan Zhuixing had already asked about Wen Rui's situation on the way here, so he already had an understanding of the situation. After arriving at the backyard, the two of them bowed to the Demon King of 3 Knights. Wen Rui then gave a detailed answer to the Demon King of 3 Knights' questions about the situation in the ruins of God realm. Just what kind of mystical treasure is it, to actually be able to travel back and forth between the 3 realms at will? The Demon King of 3 Knights' eyes flickered and said, "No wonder the passage to the human realm was sealed, and Yu Qianqiu was still able to run to the already sealed ruins of God Realm. The Azure Sky Great Demon King had already tidied himself up and stood quietly behind him. For a woman to be able to come out of the Demon King of Three Knights' bedroom, it was obvious what she had done before. Yan Zhuoxing couldn't help but take a few more glances, but what he was most worried about was that the human realm was sealed. There were still people he cared about there. However, there were some secrets that he didn't want to completely confess, so he impatiently cupped his hands and said, "Demon King, my mother and sister are still in the hands of Yu Qianqiu. Please think of a way to save them, Demon King." Of course. The Demon King of Three Knights nodded, then tilted his head slightly and said, "That sealed ruins of God Realm, Jin Tai should know better than us." Eunuch Li understood what he meant. He wanted to find Jin Tai, so he bowed slightly and left. Chapter 1185. Jin Tai, who had been summoned, felt apprehensive. He did not know why the Demon Lord had summoned him, but he did not dare delay and rushed over as fast as he could. Demon Lord Three Knights stared at Jin Tai and said indifferently, "Back when my devil path dominated the three realms, I had never heard of the Divine Ruin Realm. Tell me in detail what this Divine Ruin Realm is." "Yes." Jin Tai bowed and glanced at the people present. He was a little curious in his heart, but he still answered honestly, "Although the Divine Ruin Realm and the Netherworld Divine Palace are located in the Immortal Realm and the Netherworld respectively, they are actually similar. It's just that the Netherworld Divine Palace was created by the Coiling Dragon God, while the Divine Ruin Realm was created by the Phoenix God. There are all kinds of fierce beasts in the Divine Ruins Realm, and their cultivations are all different. The one with the highest cultivation is a rainbow-feathered lion king with a cultivation similar to mine, and he is the current lord of the Divine Ruins Realm. When I fought with him back then he was slightly weaker than me, but I was also unable to kill him." Created by the Phoenix God. Demon Lord Three Knights pondered for a moment, then asked, "Do you have any way to enter the Divine Ruin Realm?" Jin Tai answered truthfully, "The passage to the Divine Ruin Realm is a bit strange. It only opens once every 100 years, and there is still some time before it opens again. If you want to enter, you will have to wait until it opens again. This subordinate has no other way to enter. I didn't call you here to listen to your refusal, I wanted you to think of a way." Demon Lord Three Knights' eyes flashed with red light. "I let you rule the immortal world for so many years, yet you can't even do such a small thing. What's the difference between you and trash? What's the use of keeping you?" Jin Tai trembled in fear. Just as he was about to beg, his eyes suddenly moved and he revealed a look of joy, reporting to the Demon Lord, "Although I have no way to enter, there is someone who might have a way. However, I cannot invite that person. I'm afraid the Demon Lord will have to find him personally." Yan Zhuoxing's eyes also lit up as he looked at Three Knights with some hope. "Who is so arrogant that I have to personally invite him?" Demon Lord Three Knights said, "Don't beat around the bush, just say who it is." "Old Man Mu of the Ancient Forest." Jin Tai observed his expression and said, "Back then the reason why I was able to deal with that Myriad Swords Demon Monarch was because he gave me pointers in the Divine Ruin Realm, allowing me to find the Phoenix Plume and refine the Soul Transformation Smoke. In this subordinate's opinion, he should be very familiar with the Divine Ruin Realm." Mu Yuanzi. Demon Monarch Three Knights muttered to himself. After seeing Yan Zhuoxing's hopeful gaze, he closed his eyes and said, "All right. It's settled then, Kinta. Come with me to the ancient forest." Kintai's expression stiffened and he immediately panicked. He didn't expect that Sanyu would ask him to go with him. He immediately cursed Bai Qi in his heart. Why did he drag Old Man Mu into this? If they confronted each other later, wouldn't he die a horrible death? He had thought that as long as he didn't face Old Man Mu, he would have a million reasons to convince the Demon Lord of Three Knights that Old Man Mu was lying if he asked about it later. Given his temper, if he couldn't deal with Old Man Mu, he wouldn't have gone to look for Old Man Mu again and again. However, there was no other way. Demon Monarch Three Knights did as he said. After instructing Eunuch Li to guard the house well, he flung his scarlet cloak and flew away. Kintai didn't dare to hesitate and could only bite the bullet and chase after him. However, he already had an idea in his mind. He had the thought that it was better for him to die than for himself. Anyway, he wasn't the one who said it. He was prepared to push all the blame onto Bai Qi and think of a way to protect himself first. After the people in the courtyard dispersed, Yan Zhuoxing led Wen Rui back to his heavily guarded mountain. He had just instructed Wen Rui to settle down and was about to return to his room to wait for news from Demon Monarch Three Knights when a guard ran in and reported, "Demon Monarch Qing Tian requests to see you. Quickly invite him in." Yan Zhuoxing ordered. He waited for a while before slowly walking out to welcome him. Although Demon Monarch Qing Tian was an old minister of the devil world and had a higher cultivation than him, he didn't want others to see that he was eager to curry favor with him. Before he walked out of the inner courtyard, Demon Monarch Qing Tian walked over with a smile. He bowed and said, "Greetings, Vice Palace Lord." Yan Zhuixing cupped his hands politely and said, "May I know what advice Lord Qing Tian has for me?" How would this subordinate dare to give advice to Vice Palace Lord Yan? The Demon King of Qing Tian stroked his hair and said with a concerned expression, "I heard that the Vice Palace Master was frightened previously. I don't know if this physical body is suitable for you to possess. I'm proficient in a set of techniques, and I'm willing to help the Vice Palace Master loosen up your bones." After saying that, he looked around. Seeing that there was no one else around, he directly walked past Yan Zhuixing and entered his room. He waved his hand and said, "Vice Palace Lord, quickly come and lie down on the bed." Yan Zhuixing was momentarily confused by her. He thought that she had something secretive to report. Who knew that just as he entered the room with a heavy heart, Demon Monarch Qing Tian closed the door and pulled Yan Zhuixing to press him down on the bed, really letting him massage him. "What are you doing?" Yan Zhuixing was shocked. Who knew that there was still more to come? Just as he was about to get up, Demon Monarch Qing Tian had already taken off her clothes and was on top of him. Yan Zhuixing flipped over and pushed her away. He flashed to the door and opened it. Standing at the door to prove that he was open and above board, he said, "Lord Qing Tian, please leave quickly. I can pretend that I don't know anything." Demon Monarch Qing Tian laid on the bed and giggled seductively. "Vice Palace Lord, what are you afraid of? I have been serving Lord Devil God all the way until Devil King 3 nights. My responsibility is to serve every generation's Devil King well. Vice Palace Lord will ascend to the Devil King's throne sooner or later, so there's no need to hold back. Even if Devil King knows, he won't say anything. Otherwise, Qing Tian wouldn't dare to disturb you." Yan Zhuixing had long heard of Demon Monarch Qing Tian's beauty. Although he knew that she had countless men in her bedchamber, and although his heart was moved by this woman, he wouldn't touch Devil King 3 nights woman before he ascended to the Devil King's throne. Who knew if she was sent to test him? He cupped his hands and said, "I still have some things to do. Lord Qing Tian, please do as you wish." After saying that, he quickly left. After Yu Qianqiu brought Wen Rui to the celestial realm, they separated. He didn't know that Wen Rui had already betrayed him. In order to not alert the enemy in the celestial realm and to avoid directly going against Devil King 3 nights, Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong secretly captured a few people from the Devil Dao to interrogate them. They didn't manage to get any information about the Earth Spirit. It seemed like they didn't know who the Earth Spirit was. However, they did get information that Jin Tai was in the illusory immortal city. In the underground space created by the Earth Art, Hong Tailong directly killed a captive that didn't get any information. He turned around and asked, "What do we do? It seems like we still have to find high-level people from the Devil Dao to ask about the Earth Spirit's whereabouts. However, if we make a move, we will definitely alert others. We can't capture these small shrimps silently. We might be surrounded and attacked by other experts, or we might have to face Devil King 3 nights directly. Should we run further away and capture a Devil Dao expert in the Netherworld to ask? F***CK. Since we know where Jin Tai is, let's go to the illusory immortal city to investigate. If we can capture Jin Tai, we should be able to ask him who the Earth Spirit is." Yu Qianqiu stared at him and asked, "Do you dare to come with me? What am I afraid of?" Hong Tailong patted his chest heroically. With this, Mu Yuanzi no longer paid attention to Jin Tai. Instead, he stared at Third Night and said in a low voice, "You're the third Devil King of the Devil World, Devil King 3 nights?" His tone was somewhat shocked. Glancing at Jin Tai, he faintly guessed that this guy had probably reopened the Devil World. "That's right." Devil King 3 nights cupped his hands slightly as a sign of respect. Chapter 1186. Mu Yuanzi stood there indifferently with his cane. Even the demon god of the past had to give him some face. He felt that 3 nights' respect was only natural. He stood there and asked indifferently, "What business does the demon lord have in my ancient forest?" After so many years, 3 nights had forgotten that there was someone who dared to put on airs in front of him. A faint red light appeared in his eyes, and he lost interest in pleasantries. However, he still had a faint smile on his face. "I want to ask Senior Mu about something. 3 nights has something to do in the Divine Ruin realm, but it's not time to open yet, so I want to ask Senior to show me a way in." Mu Yuanzi's cold gaze swept over Jin Tai, and then he snorted, "With the demon lord's strength, Unifying the three realms is not a problem. Do you want to even go to the Divine Ruin realm? Listen to my advice, greed will not end well. This was a warning. The smile on Demon Lord Three Knights' face disappeared, and the scarlet cape fluttering in the wind instantly stopped. He said indifferently, I won't hide it from Senior, a pair of people use some unknown method to escape into the Divine Ruin realm. I must kill them, so I ask Senior to show me the way. Mu Yuanzi's expression changed slightly and he said with a frown, Is there someone in the three realms who knows how to open the Divine Ruin realm? Oh. Yuqianshou. Demon Lord Three Knights didn't hide anything. Yuqianshou? Mu Yuanzi froze and then said in shock, How can he open the passage to the Divine Ruin realm? I don't know about this, but it seems that Senior Mu also knows Yuqianshou. Demon Lord Three Knights' tone changed and he said word by word, From Senior's words, you definitely know how to open the Divine Ruin realm. Please teach me. I don't know how to open the Divine Ruin realm, so don't disturb me in the future. Mu Yuanzi said stiffly, and then turned to open the profound wave-light wall to return to his Mu Killer Sea. Mu Yuanzi. Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Demon Lord Three Knights' cold and threatening voice sounded behind him. Mu Yuanzi abruptly turned around and slammed the wooden staff in his hand into the ground. His eyes shone brightly as he shouted, Even demonic god Yi doesn't dare to be so rude to me. Since when did it become your turn to be so impudent? Under the golden leaves of the ancient language tree, the scarlet cape suddenly fluttered in the wind. Demon Monarch Three Knights snorted coldly and said, Mu Yuanzi, I won't beat around the bush with you. The ancestor, Lord Devil God, had crossed the mortal realm and god realm and accepted a disciple in the lower realm. Previously, Lord Devil God had directly torn open the void and saved the disciple's life from the divine realm. Now that the disciple's parents had fallen into the hands of Yuqianshou, Sanyi, as a descendant of Devil God, naturally had to share Devil God's burden. He couldn't let Lord Devil God personally take care of everything. This concerns Lord Devil God's face, so I, Sanyi, have no choice but to help. What? Mu Yuanzi exclaimed when he heard this. He did not think that the demonic god would actually accept a disciple from the lower realm, and he did not think that the demonic god would directly come from the immortal world to help this disciple. Not to mention that this cultivation was too shocking, the demonic god's actions were even more shocking. Demon Monarch Three Knights snorted and continued, If you are willing to help me, I, Sanyi, will follow the old rules of the Night Clan and restrict the heroes of the Devil Dao from invading your ancient forest. But if you don't give me this face, then don't blame me for not caring about the feelings of the older generation. For Lord Devil God, I, Sanyi, can do anything and I will do it at any cost. Although your cultivation is higher than mine, you should know the power of my Devil God arts. If we fight, it's not certain who will win. If I want to destroy your ancient forest, it will only take an instant. You won't be able to do anything to me. I hope that Senior will reconsider and not force Sanyi to do something he doesn't want to do. This was a completely naked threat and also a final ultimatum. It was clearly telling Mu Yuanzi that he had to agree whether he wanted to or not. Hiding to the side, Jin Tai was secretly envious of Demon Monarch Three Knights' strength. He didn't know when he would have such an awe-inspiring moment. Mu Yuanzi's gaze was fixed on the unmoving Demon Monarch Three Knights. His expression was dark and gloomy. No one had ever threatened him like this in many years, but he knew that Demon Monarch Three Knights was speaking the truth. He had interacted with the Devil God before, so he naturally knew how terrifying the Devil God arts were. Although Sanye's cultivation was slightly lower than his, it was almost impossible for him to defeat Sanyi. Moreover, he knew that there was an even more terrifying person behind Sanyi. That person wore white robes and a white hat, and had been following Devil God Knight for a long time. His strength was extremely terrifying, but he was unusually low-key and loyal to the Night Clan. After some thought, Mu Yuanzi gave in. There was another important reason why he gave in. That was because he didn't have a good impression of Yuqianshou to begin with. Yuqianshou's wood elemental magic arts inexplicably made him feel a little apprehensive. Logically speaking, with Yuqianshou's cultivation he shouldn't have felt this way, but every time he saw Yuqianshou, he would feel a little uneasy. Mu Yuanzi took out a jade archive, quickly injected something into it, and threw it to Demon Monarch Three Knights. He warned sternly, I hope you keep your promise. Otherwise this old man will make you regret it. In the end, the two of them decided that if they couldn't find Jin Tai, they would take the opportunity to kill Yan Juexing. Thus they found the mountain Yan Juexing lived in. However, the guards outside the manor were extremely tight. The two of them didn't dare to force their way in and alert the enemy. In the end, they sneakily used the earth art at the foot of the mountain and directly appeared in the manor at the top of the mountain. Demon King Qing Tian was still lying naked on Yan Zhuixing's bed, but she pulled a golden blanket to cover her body. She didn't believe that Yan Zhuixing wouldn't come back. This time, if she didn't take advantage of the fact that Demon Monarch 3 Knights wasn't here, she would definitely not stop. She was very confident in her body and didn't believe that Yan Zhuixing could keep rejecting her. Suddenly he heard the sound of sneaky footsteps outside. The Azure Sky Demon King instantly covered his mouth and laughed. Who would dare to sneak around Vice Palace Head Yan's residence other than Yan Zhuixing? Who else could it be? Yan Zhuixing might even want to see if he was still there. He immediately chuckled and said, "Vice Palace Head Yan, the Demon Monarch has brought Jin Tai out. What are you afraid of? This servant is about to fall asleep from waiting. Come quickly." Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong, who were sneaking around in the courtyard, were instantly stunned. So Demon Monarch 3 Knights brought Jin Tai out. No wonder they couldn't find Jin Tai. This meant that Demon Monarch 3 Knights wasn't in the illusory immortal city. Furthermore, they had a great god intermediate stage fire soul mystic soldier. What was there to be afraid of? The two of them exchanged delighted glances and mistakenly thought that they had found the right place. Yan Zhuixing was having an affair in the house. Yu Qianqiu transmitted a message, "That bastard is sleeping with a woman inside. I will guard outside to prevent him from escaping. You will barge in and sneak attack him while he is distracted. You must use all your strength to kill him in one strike." As he spoke, he took out his god arrow in preparation. Hong Tailong smiled evilly and nodded. Without saying anything else, he directly broke through the window and entered. Suddenly, a woman's stern shout came from inside, "Who is it?" Boom! There was a loud explosion that shook the earth and the mountains. The house was instantly blasted into smithereens. Soil, rocks, and wood shavings flew everywhere. 2 streams of light shot into the sky. Hong Tailong looked at the other party with his mouth agape. He didn't expect that there was no one else in the room. It was just a naked woman. Furthermore, her cultivation was very high. In the sky, the completely naked Demon Monarch Qing Tian flashed with a green light. He had already put on a set of clothes, and his face was filled with killing intent. Yu Qianqiu knew that things weren't going well. Just as he was about to say that he had fallen into a trap and retreat, he suddenly heard Yan Zhuixing's voice shouting from the other side of the courtyard, "What's the matter?" He had already flown into the sky. All the guards had also quickly flashed into the sky. People from all directions immediately rushed over upon hearing the voice. "He is Yan Zhuixing. Quickly kill him." Yu Qianqiu pointed to the sky and shouted angrily. The god arrow in his hand had already turned into thousands of streams of light and shot out. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was struggling to move forward, the huge dragon's claw swung the chain, and with a hong sound, the Azure Sky Great Demon King, who was unable to move freely, directly collapsed a mountain. The Azure Sky Great Demon King was immediately decapitated, and his head was separated from his corpse. Roar! Another dragon roar sounded, and the 2 dragon binding ropes in the giant dragon's claws lashed out in all directions like thunder, charging directly at Yu Qianqiu. Meanwhile, the Demon King of Qing Tian, who had fallen to the ground with his head separated from his body, suddenly stood up. The headless corpse waved its hand toward the distance, and the head immediately flew back. The head reattached to the neck and the hands returned to normal. Damn it! The Demon King of Qing Tian let out a furious roar that sounded like a ferocious spirit. With a teleportation, the other 6 great demon kings who were overseeing this place also flashed over at the same time. The 7 great demon kings surrounded the extremely arrogant huge dragon and gave it a violent beating, causing Hong Tailong to howl in pain. After all, the great demon king's cultivation was not to be trifled with. It was only because his dragon race's flesh and blood body was extremely strong. If it was someone else, they would have been killed long ago. However, he was also beaten to the point where his entire body was covered in blood. The situation was critical, and Yu Qianqiu could no longer hold back. He had already prepared the true Samadhi fire in Utopia for emergency use, and he summoned the infernal soldier that was condensed from the true Samadhi fire that he had prepared in Utopia in case of an emergency. The true Samadhi fire charged out of the encirclement of the 10,000 divine swords, and in an instant, the experts who were heavily encircled outside were beaten to a pulp. In the blink of an eye, several hundred experts fell to the ground while wailing in pain from the inextinguishable 7-colored flames. Once the infernal soldier broke free, it charged toward Hong Tailong to help him out. True Samadhi fire. Countless exclamations rang out in the illusory immortal city. The 7 demon kings who had joined hands were taken aback. Before they could react, one of them was smacked into a ball of fire by the infernal soldier, and he fell to the ground while spitting out fresh blood. The remaining 6 demon kings did not expect that the cultivation level of this infernal soldier would be so high, and he could instantly kill a great demon king with just a raise of his hand. They were instantly scared out of their wits, and they immediately teleported away without any hesitation. When Hong Tailong broke free and saw that he had the help of a great god infernal soldier, he immediately roared, "All of you die!" Shaking his head and wagging his tail, he chased after them. "Hong Tailong, come back here. Let's retreat." Yu Qianqiu shouted madly, and at the same time he took out the last of his reserves without caring about the price. All the true samadhi fire that he had stored in his body gushed out, and the surrounding people instantly let out countless wails of pain. After the true samadhi fire exploded, it quickly retracted and attached itself to the 10,000 divine swords. Rainbow lights danced in the air, and they directly opened up a path of blood, charging towards the returning Hong Tailong. The 2 of them were preparing to rendezvous and leave this place. Seeing that the 2 of them wanted to escape, Eunuch Li, who was standing with his hands behind his back, let out a cold snort. He put down his hands behind his back and his figure disappeared from the roof. Yan Zhuoxing looked left and right and instantly felt a little unsafe. Hong Tailong, who was hurriedly returning, suddenly realized that his neck had stiffened, and he stopped flying in the air. Yu Qianqiu cried out in alarm, "Hong Tailong, be careful." A large illusory hand suddenly appeared in the sky, and with a speed as fast as lightning, it grabbed Hong Tailong's neck. With just a bit of force, Hong Tailong spurted out a mouthful of blood, and a large tongue dangled out like the tongue of a dog under the shade of a tree. His 2 large eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. If that giant hand wanted to kill Hong Tailong, it would be as easy as pinching an ant to death. Yu Qianqiu saw that person in white clothes and white hat high up in the sky. The giant hand was illusory from his body, and he immediately said in a stern voice, "Yi Tiankong's little life is in my hands. Try and kill him." The expressionless Eunuch Li's countenance changed when he heard that. He suddenly stared at Yu Qianqiu, and the giant hand grabbed Hong Tailong and smashed him. A red light shot towards the ground, and with a boom, the ground trembled. Hong Tailong's enormous body directly blasted a deep pit on the ground. Meanwhile, the fire soul profound weapon had already pounced into the sky, and a fist was blasted out like a thunderbolt. The illusory giant hand on Eunuch Li's body clenched into a fist, and actually clashed with the incoming heavy fist. With a loud bang, the astral winds that rippled out were like millions of mountains that were pushed down in all directions. The entire psychedelic immortal city immediately suffered the baptism of an incomparably powerful shock wave. The visible wave of air that spread out was like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. In an instant, countless mountains were flung away, houses and buildings were turned into ashes, and there were even innumerable figures that were instantly torn into pieces. Hong Tailong, who had transformed back into his human form, had just climbed out of the deep pit when he was struck by the powerful wave of air. He spat out blood and fell into the deep pit, and was almost buried alive. The quick-witted Yu Qianqiu instantly fused the 10,000 swords into one to form a steel ball to protect his body, and directly burrowed into the depths of the ground. However, he still felt the enormous pressure coming from the ground. He didn't dare to delay as he was afraid that Hong Tailong's life would be in danger. He quickly broke through the ground and went into the deep pit. He grabbed Hong Tailong and was about to escape. "Wait. Your fire soul profound weapon." Hong Tailong, who was on the verge of death, grabbed him and said. After the 2 experts collided in the sky, they rapidly separated. The true samadhi fire that was condensed on the fire soul profound weapon had already been shaken to the point that a lot of it had already dispersed. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, and the fire soul profound weapon repeatedly teleported over. In the night sky, Eunuch Li's eyes were as bright as day. His figure flashed, and his original body similarly teleported repeatedly as he rapidly chased after Hong Tailong. A huge hand appeared once again, and directly stretched out its claws to pierce towards the back of the fire soul profound weapon. When the fire soul profound weapon neared the deep pit, it flipped over and retaliated with a fist. Bang! Another earth-shattering bang resounded. After all, the fire soul profound weapon was a dead object that relied on energy to support itself. Without the support of sufficient true samadhi fire, in addition to the fact that it had already suffered a heavy injury and consumed a huge amount of energy, how could it still persist? Bang! The majestic true samadhi fire instantly exploded, and a purple bead shot into the deep pit like a meteor. After that, A huge claw directly blasted away the raging true Samadhi fire and chased after the purple bead. Yu Qianqiu was greatly shocked. He waved his hand at the bead that was shooting over, and instantly disappeared with Hong Tai Long. Boom! The ground trembled, and the claw that was stabbing down directly shook open the deep pit into an abyss that extended in all directions. Eunuch Li, who had shot down rapidly from the sky, immediately dove into the abyss. The ground trembled violently again, and huge chunks of soil that were hundreds of meters or even thousands of meters in radius continuously flew into the sky. The few great demon kings that were protecting Yan Zhuoxing were shocked. Just now, Eunuch Li's attack had already implicated tens of thousands of their own people. How could they dare to stay any longer? They immediately protected Yan Zhuoxing and quickly left again. Countless demon Dao experts were also scared out of their wits as they quickly fled in all directions. In just a short while, the entire huge illusory immortal city had been dug out. All the mountains, land and water were gone. All of them had flown into the sky, and a terrifyingly huge pit had appeared below. Even underground lava had begun to gush out. It was unimaginable how a person could dig out such a huge pit in such a short period of time. Countless chunks of soil from the sky didn't even have time to fall. Eunuch Li stood at the center of the huge pit with a gloomy expression. After scanning the surroundings, he flew into the sky, and the countless chunks of soil that covered the starry sky finally fell down with a rumble. In just a short while, the entire pit was filled up again. The ground trembled, and as the endless dust covered the sky, Eunuch Li had come out of the ground again. He floated in the sky and looked down silently. His expression was so gloomy that it seemed like water could be squeezed out of it. He didn't say anything for a long time. Ever since he had ascended as a demon god, he had never made a move easily. Once he did, he had never failed. However, he had failed today. He had let two people with lower cultivation than him slip away under his nose. Furthermore, they were two people with lower cultivation than him. Demon King 3 Knights, who had rushed back through the night, had heard the commotion here from far away. In a great shock, he had sped up and rushed back. He had encountered many of his subordinates that had scattered. When he arrived at the illusory immortal city, he discovered that the entire city had been destroyed. The entire landscape had changed, as if a divine plow had fallen from the sky and plowed through everything. Even with his vast experience and knowledge, he was secretly shocked. Seeing the silent Eunuch Li floating in the sky, he quickly went over and asked, "What happened?" Eunuch Li took a deep breath, and his gloomy expression returned to normal. He bowed slightly to Demon King 3 Knights and said, "Yu Qianqiu snuck into the illusory immortal city to assassinate the Vice Palace Lord in the middle of the night. This subordinate's attack wasn't good, and he still managed to escape." What? Demon King 3 Knights was shocked. Even you let him escape? Chapter 1188. At the same time, he quickly looked around and heaved a sigh of relief when he saw a few demon kings protecting Yan Zhuoxing. The demonic path army that had scattered in all directions also regrouped. All of them looked at Eunuch Li with lingering fear, frightened by his methods. At this moment, Jin Tai also hurried back and looked around in bewilderment. Eunuch Li quietly floated to 3 Knights' side and said solemnly, "Let's not talk about this subordinate's incompetence for now. What shocked this subordinate the most was that there was a huge red dragon that came with Yu Qianqiu to assassinate him." Dragon? Demon King 3 Knights suddenly turned around and said, "You mean a dragon from the god realm? A huge red dragon?" Jin Tai smacked his lips and suddenly exclaimed, "Could it be Hong Tai Long? Could it be that he's not dead?" Eunuch Li slowly looked at him and nodded slightly. "That's right. Yu Qianqiu called that huge red dragon Hong Tai Long." Demon King 3 Knights also turned around and revealed a questioning look. Jin Tai hurriedly bowed and explained that Hong Tai Long was the mount of that demon lord of 10,000 swords. However, I personally saw him and demon lord of 10,000 swords fall into the soul-transforming smoke. I didn't expect him to still be alive. This subordinate is worried that demon lord of 10,000 swords is still alive. However, since the divine arrow is in Yu Qianqiu's hands, the chances of demon lord of 10,000 swords surviving are not high. Otherwise he would definitely come for revenge. I didn't expect the God Realm's dragon race to also participate in this matter. Demon King 3 Knights' eyes flickered. That dragon is not worthy of fear. This subordinate can easily kill him. Eunuch Li suddenly reported with a serious expression. Just as this subordinate was about to kill that dragon, Yu Qianqiu suddenly called out fourth young master's name. What? Demon King 3 Knights' body trembled. He turned around and looked at Eunuch Li in disbelief. "What did you just say?" Jin Tai was stunned. He didn't know where this fourth young master came from. Back when he was in the demon realm, the demon lord only had 2 sons. This subordinate dares not speak nonsense. Eunuch Li bowed, looked at San Yi and slowly said, Yu Qianqiu said that Yi Tiankong's life was in his hands. I don't know how he knew fourth young master's name, and I don't know if it's true or false, but it did make this subordinate hesitate to take action. Night Sky. Jin Tai thought about it carefully. He had no impression of this name at all. It should be the first time he had heard of it. Yu Qianqiu. Demon Lord 3 Knights squeezed out these 3 words from between his teeth. He then flung his scarlet cape and said with a cold glint in his eyes, I don't care if what he said is true or false. Immediately gather the army and make detailed preparations. This attack must be foolproof, we can't let him escape again. When this lord enters the Divine Ruins realm, I will capture him and personally interrogate him. Eunuch Li did not forget to remind him, Demon Lord, you must not underestimate Yu Qianqiu. This person can actually summon a middle-stage great god fireman, and it is a fireman condensed from true Samadhi fire, forcing me to not dare to go all out. He is not simple. There is such a thing? Demon Lord 3 Knights stared at Jin Tai, as if he wanted to hear his explanation. Jin Tai hurriedly bowed and said, This subordinate has never heard of any true Samadhi fire man. As Yu Qianqiu's cultivation increased day by day, the territory of Utopia became wider and wider, and the sea had already appeared. On an isolated island in the depths of the sea, 2 figures fell to the ground, sprawled on the ground, panting. Damn it! The demonic path is indeed full of experts. I thought that after Demon Lord 3 Knights left, I would be able to deal with him, but who knew that an incomparably powerful guy would appear? Even my middle-stage great god fire soul profound weapon couldn't stop him, too terrifying. Hong Tai Long. Yu Qianqiu got up, shook Hong Tai Long who was covered in blood and said anxiously, Are you all right? I won't die yet. Hong Tai Long sat up and said with a bitter smile, That person is indeed powerful. If you didn't say Yi Tiankong's name at the crucial moment, I would have probably died in his hands. I'll send you to the Divine Ruin realm to recuperate. At least there will be someone to take care of you when you need it. Yu Qianqiu stood up. He was fine but he was scared out of his wits. Hong Tai Long patted the blood and mud on his face. Hearing the hidden meaning in Yu Yang's words, he raised his head and asked, What do you want to do? I'll make a trip to the netherworld and think of a way to find out who the Earth Spirit is. If I don't devour the Earth Spirit and refine more high-grade Earth Soul profound weapons, we won't have any hope of winning against the demonic path. Yu Qianqiu sighed. With a wave of his hand, the 2 of them disappeared. Returning to the Divine Ruin realm, Wei Chuanqiu and the others were shocked to see Hong Tai Long heavily injured. Yu Qianqiu left Hong Tai Long for them to take care of, then slipped away to the netherworld. In the dark netherworld, he was like a lonely night walker, searching for the ray of light that could change the fate of the 3 realms, even though his own methods weren't bright. Outside the Divine Ruin realm, in the depths of the endless granite mountain range, was the entrance to the Divine Ruin realm from the Immortal realm. Boom. Following a not too loud sound, the entrance, which was originally sealed, suddenly reopened. A dot of white light expanded and rotated in the cave. Outside the cave, the 3 million demonic army covered the sky and earth. The 11th Army's million men moved in full force according to their previous training, quickly entering the designated battle location. Before they could even catch their breaths, they were immediately assaulted by a torrential wave of attacks. They were attacked from all directions at the same time, and the battle reached its climax in the blink of an eye. In an instant, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Rumble. The deafening sound shook the heavens and the earth. Almost everyone in the base came out in shock. Even Bai Sujin and the injured Hong Tai Long were no exception. The men and women who had surged out of the base were all asking what was going on. Zhang Ping had no idea what was going on, but he was afraid that something would happen to these people. He quickly shouted at the men and women, All of you retreat. However, these arrogant men and women were all rubbing their palms together, thinking that they could be of help. Only Hong Tai Long heard the commotion in the distance and knew that something was wrong. His expression changed and he said, Not good. There are quite a few experts who can contact Yu Qianqiu. Quickly summon him back, we need to retreat. Zhang Ping knew that an expert like him would not speak without thinking, so he quickly took out his small silver ball. Hibiscus also took out her silver ball, and so did 100 Charms Enchantress. The million-strong army from the human world had only been training for less than a year, but they all thought that they were invincible with numbers. They were full of ambition and wanted to show off their skills. Little did they know that if they could really be invincible, Yu Qianqiu would have dragged them out to fight a long time ago. However, there were indeed some benefits to this. The first wave of arrogance was actually resisted by their frenzied attacks. However, when the demonic path experts opened up a path and tore them apart, deafening explosions and miserable screams rang out endlessly. The human army was simply unable to withstand a single blow. In addition, the difference in cultivation was too great, so they were immediately faced with an inhumane massacre. Just these little bastards want to block my demonic path army. Demon Lord Three Knights looked down from the sky and snorted disdainfully. He sniffed the stench of blood and said coldly, "Have all the army slowly advance. Surround them from both the sky and the ground. Don't let a single person escape today." With a wave of his cloak, he led Eunuch Li and the others to rapidly advance. In the face of enemies who were superior in both numbers and strength, and in the face of this asymmetrical battle, the morale of the millions of soldiers in the human world was instantly crushed. The survivors turned around and fled, not listening to any military orders or *T orders. Running for their lives was the most important thing. The demonic path army was not in a hurry to give chase. Chapter 1189. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, who were nearby, saw that defeat was inevitable. They couldn't stop the enemy's attack at all, and they couldn't stop the army from dispersing. They knew that everything was over. Amidst the fierce attack, the two of them looked at each other from afar and quickly escaped together. Suddenly, the two of them felt a chill on their waist and lost their sense of direction at the same time. Both of them fell from the sky and saw the lower half of their bodies still spurting blood. The countenances of the two of them changed drastically. They crashed heavily into the ground and rolled on the ground facing each other. Gu Qingyun coughed up blood as he looked at Hong Qi and smiled miserably. "To think that we would have such an ending." Hong Qi also kept spurting out blood from his mouth. He said while gurgling, "Wrong choice." Gu Qingyun turned his head and looked at the densely packed and slowly advancing demonic army in the sky. Then he grabbed Hong Qi's hand strenuously and said with a weak breath, "What did you say?" Hong Qi tightened his grip on Chu Yang's hand. His eyes widened but his pupils were gradually dilating. He panted and said, "Back then Master asked Zhang Peng and me to choose between the metal incantation art or the earth incantation art. I chose the metal incantation art. If I had chosen the earth incantation art, today we could have escaped from underground." After she said those words with great effort, her gaze became completely unfocused. It was unknown whether Gu Qingyun, whose eyes were wide open in a daze, heard what she said. In any case, the two of them held each other's hands tightly and stopped moving. The fog above the base was swept away by a strong air current. Demon King Three Knights was in front, Yan Zhuixing and Eunuch Li were behind him on both sides. Behind them were Jintai, Hutu, Hitorigami, and Moro, the four great Demon King level powerhouses, standing in a row. The seven of them looked down coldly. Moro's 100,000 army directly plunged down from the sky and surrounded the entire valley, preventing the scattered army from entering. At the same time, it also prevented the people inside from escaping. The expressions of the men and women below changed drastically as they raised their heads to look at the sky. Hong Tailong realized that the white-robed man with a profound cultivation was still standing behind the mighty-looking man with the cloak on his shoulders. He immediately whispered, "This person should be the Demon King Three Knights. We are not his match. Everyone retreat quickly." Yan Zhuixing sneered in the sky. "Great. Those important to Yu Qianqiu are all here." Jintai's gaze suddenly looked down at Jianghu and Immortal Crocodile Lord, not knowing why they were here. Finally, his gaze landed on Hong Tailong and found that it was indeed the Hong Tailong from back then. Seeing that these people were trying to escape into the underground base, the Three Knights Demon Lord waved his hand, and the four Demon King level experts teleported down. They lined up in a row and blocked the entrance. The expressions of Hong Tailong and the others changed drastically. Hong Tailong and said coldly, "Who do you?" Demon King Three Knights stared at the earth spirit below. "To you is you, Tailong Knight." Demon King Hood cupped his hands and stomped on the ground. The entrance behind him was instantly blocked by mud. Hong Tailong suddenly turned around and looked at Demon King Hutu with surprise and joy. He did not expect this person to be in Yu Qianqiu. Just as his gaze turned to Jin Tai, he heard Demon King Three Knights snort. "Where is Yu Qianqiu?" Hibiscus and the other women's faces were filled with fear. No one below answered. Yan Zhuixing, who found a chance to vent, immediately shouted, "You dare not answer Demon King's question? You are courting death." The floating demon blade behind him shot down, and a golden chain flew out. Hong Tailong's dragon-binding rope knocked the demon blade away. You dare to show off with your puny cultivation? Hong Tailong swung the dragon-binding rope in his hand and sneered. Yan Zhuixing made a fool of himself in front of everyone. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he hurriedly recalled the demon blade that was knocked away. Then let this lord see how high your cultivation is. Demon King Three Knights waved his hand, and a torrential demon cloud surged out from behind his scarlet cape. A huge demon claw grabbed down from the sky. Hong Tailong's dragon-binding rope quickly lashed out, but it was nimbly caught by the demon claw. With a light shake, the flesh on Hong Tailong's palm split open and blood gushed out. He took a few steps back and blood flowed out of his mouth. The dragon-binding rope was instantly snatched away. Kill! Zhang Peng suddenly shouted, and close to 10,000 hero soldiers surged out from the valley. A group of warriors wearing heavenly metal armor fearlessly charged at Demon King Three Knights and the others in the sky. Close to 1,000 people charged at Jintai's group of 4. Immediately after, Zhang Peng took the opportunity to slap the ground, and the group of people quickly sank into the ground. They wanted to sacrifice close to 10,000 subordinates to fight for a chance to escape. However, the opponent's cultivation was too high, so high that it was beyond his imagination. A golden cloud rod suddenly appeared in Jintai's hand, and it became longer and larger, sweeping in all directions. The close to 1,000 people didn't even have the chance to get close. The other 3 great demon kings were calm and unruffled, as though they couldn't be bothered to make a move. However, seeing that they wanted to escape, Great Demon King Huda coldly snorted, "You dare to show off your earth elemental arts in front of me." He raised his foot and stomped. Just as everyone sank halfway into the ground rapidly rebounded, and the group of people was pushed back. Zhang Peng's face instantly turned pale and he thought to himself, "It's over." In the sky, the demon claw's dragon-binding rope created a monstrous whip shadow. Clang clang. The figures that rushed up were all sent flying. The defense of the heavenly metal armor was indeed strong. Even Demon King Three Knights couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. With his cultivation he was actually unable to break through the sturdy armor. However, his cultivation was too high. As long as he hit, the heavenly metal armor would immediately crumble, and blood would spurt out from the gaps of the armor. The people inside had no chance of survival. Although the heroic army wasn't afraid of death, this wasn't a battlefield that belonged to their level. The difference was like heaven and earth, and they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu, who was in the underworld, suddenly heard the urgent calls of so many people. He immediately knew that something had happened, but he didn't know what had happened. He hurriedly rushed back to the base, and when he quickly reached the exit of the base, he found that the exit was sealed. Just as he was about to break through the ground, he suddenly heard Yan Zhuixing's fierce shout coming from outside. Coupled with the sounds of battle that hadn't subsided yet, his expression immediately changed. Without hesitation, he quickly returned to the depths of the base and broke into the secret cave whereby Hua Fairy and Yan Zixia were imprisoned. As soon as he saw him rushing in with a murderous aura, Ferdinand was shocked and blocked the mother and daughter, saying, "Yu Qianqiu, everything can be discussed, they didn't do anything wrong to you. Get lost." Yu Qianqiu shouted angrily. With a wave of his hand, he directly sent Ferdinand back to Utopia. The mother and daughter tried to block and protect each other in fear, but Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything and sent 2 balls of Samadhi true fire into the mother and daughter's bodies, knocking them out. Then he grabbed them and broke through the soil layer above to rush out of the ground. "Stop. All of you stand down." Yu Qianqiu's fierce shout came from afar and everyone looked over. In the blink of an eye, there were only about 1,000 people left in the heroic army. When they saw that it was him who gave the order, they quickly dodged and surrounded Zhang Peng and the others to protect them. Yu Qianqiu carried the mother and daughter and flew over, but he was blocked by the Mara army. Yu Qianqiu lifted the mother and daughter up to show everyone with a gloomy expression. Yan Zhuixing exclaimed, "Mother, sister." Be it Eunuch Li Jintai and the other great demon kings, they all looked at each other. Demon Lord Three Knights retracted the demonic claw that he had condensed and held the dragon-taming rope in his hand. He shouted coldly, "Let him come over." The Mara army quickly opened up a path and quickly intercepted and killed the people who came over. God knew how many people cried out to him for help. "Disciplinary envoy, save me." Yu Qianqiu carried the 2 of them and flew to the sky above the base. He looked around and everywhere he looked there were corpses strewn all over. Under such a blatant massacre, many people cried out to him for help when they saw him, but he couldn't do anything. This made his heart feel like it was being cut by a knife, but he knew that now wasn't the time to be impulsive. He had to stay calm or else he might not be able to save anyone. Furthermore, he couldn't bring so many people away at once. Yan Zhuixing, your mother and sister are in my hands. Hurry up and tell your subordinates to stop. Yu Qianqiu shouted with a sinister expression. He carried the mother and daughter and slowly landed in front of everyone. 10,000 golden flying swords flew out from his sleeves and danced in the sky, protecting everyone behind him. The Fire Soul mystic weapon condensed by the true Samadhi fire also appeared out of nowhere and protected him. Hong Tailong and the others saw that Yu Qianqiu had actually captured Yan Zhuixing's mother and sister as hostages, and they all heaved a sigh of relief. Yan Zhuixing immediately shouted angrily with his eyes wide open, "Yu Qianqiu, you despicable person. Tell your subordinates to stop and let my people come over. Otherwise, don't blame me for being impolite to your mother and sister." Yu Qianqiu said word by word. Now that things had come to this, he still wanted to save as many people as possible. Who knew that the moment these words came out, Demon King Three Knights was very unhappy. How could he always be threatened by others? The two dragon binding ropes in his hands suddenly shot out and directly stabbed towards the Allure Beauty and Jasper Flower Fairy below. He also wanted to capture the two of them to threaten Yu Qianqiu. Otherwise, he would be at a disadvantage even though he had won a great victory. The dragon binding ropes were as fast as lightning, catching everyone off guard. Fortunately, the Fire Soul mystic weapon suddenly shot out and grabbed onto the two dragon binding ropes. Two streams of true Samadhi fire quickly burned along the dragon binding ropes. Demon King Three Knights hurriedly released his grip. His eyes glowed red as demonic aura swirled around his body. He was truly enraged. He pointed down and shouted, "If you dare touch a single strand of hair on the mother and daughter, I guarantee that none of you will live." The white-robed and white-hat eunuch Li also took a step forward. Yu Qianqiu was alarmed. He knew that he could not hesitate any longer. His divine sense enveloped everyone behind him and they disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. Such an inconceivable scene stunned everyone. They could not imagine how these people had suddenly disappeared. Eunuch Li teleported below and slowly walked to investigate the situation. Demon King Three Knights, who had just boasted, was stunned in the air. He never expected that he would slap himself in the face. Suddenly his demonic aura surged into the sky. He raised his arms high and roared, "Kill! Kill them all! Leave no one alive!" In an instant the demonic army began a frenzied massacre. The screams in the surroundings gradually weakened. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu could not care less about exposing the secret of Utopia to too many people. He knew what would happen to the remaining people after he escaped with these people. Once everyone landed in Utopia, Yu Qianqiu quickly scanned the familiar faces. Suddenly his face turned pale as he exclaimed, "Hong Qi, Gu Qingyun, Zhang Peng, they aren't with you?" Chapter 1190. When Zhang Peng heard this, his expression changed and he said in panic, "Senior brother and the others are commanding the army to resist. They are still in the Divine Ruin realm." Everyone's hearts thumped as they looked at Yu Qianqiu. Judging from the situation at that time, it was likely that his disciple had already met with a mishap. Nongzhu, who was quarreling with the Jade Flower Fairy and her daughter, no longer had the intention to settle the score with Yu Qianqiu. She looked at him with a serious expression. As for Furong and the other women, they couldn't bear to look at him. They finally understood why Yu Qianqiu didn't want them to go out and take risks. The strength of the devil path was beyond their imagination. It was not something they could afford to play with. This time the entire army had been annihilated. The losses were too great. Everyone was even worried that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't be able to take this blow. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and sensed. Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun both had the small silver ball he had given them, so he quickly found their location. Sure enough, they were still in the Divine Ruin realm. Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched. He slowly opened his eyes and looked at the crowd, saying, "Zhang Peng, you are familiar with this place. Arrange for everyone. I will go and save the people from the great flaming mountain and your senior brother." With a wave of his hand, he took away the Fire Soul profound weapon. Yu Qianqiu. Hong Tailong, who had yet to recover from his injuries, shouted. He originally wanted Yu Qianqiu to bring him along to help, but unfortunately Yu Qianqiu had already left. Everyone was speechless. This incident had given them too much of a shock. Those who were close to Yu Qianqiu and knew of Yu Qianqiu's temper could not imagine what Yu Qianqiu would do. Within the Divine Ruins realm, Yu Qianqiu found Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, but they were two corpses that had been cut in half at the waist. The air was still filled with the thick smell of blood, but the sounds of fierce fighting had already come to a stop. The demonic path army had already pushed through this area, so there was no need to worry about being discovered. The thin fog that was filled with the smell of blood was blown by the wind. The Fire Soul mystic weapon stood quietly behind him to protect him. Yu Qianqiu looked at the two broken corpses silently. The two corpses' hands were still tightly clasped together. His gloomy face twitched violently. He suddenly flashed and searched around. After a while, he found the lower bodies of the two people and put them together before sending them back to Utopia. After seeing the corpses of Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun, and then looking at Yu Qianqiu's murderous gaze, they did not know what to say. They could not even say words of condolence. Yu Qianqiu didn't stay for long and left. When he returned, he brought old ancestor Nanming Ape King, and the others from Great Flame Mountain with him. Everyone thought that the matter had come to an end for the time being. In order to comfort him, Hong Tailong also said, "Yu Qianqiu, I already know who the Earth Spirit is. So it's the great Demon King Ho Tu under Demon King 3 nights. The day of our revenge is not far away." Yu Qianqiu nodded, looked at Zhang Peng and asked, "I want to know why this happened. How did they know that we were hiding in the Divine Ruins realm?" Zhang Peng hesitated for a moment, then said with some difficulty, "Nothing happened before but ever since when Rui went out. I'm afraid it has something to do with him." "I understand. It seems that I was too soft-hearted." Yu Qianqiu nodded again. Without saying anything else, he turned and walked towards Bai Hua Fairy and Yan Zixia, who were still unconscious on the ground. He grabbed the two of them and disappeared again. Everyone was shocked. What did he mean by taking the mother and daughter away? Could it be that he wanted to find Yan Zhuixing and the others? At the place where Hong Qi and Gu Qingyun died, the mother and daughter who had just woken up looked at the ashen-faced Yu Qianqiu in horror. The two of them couldn't move or speak. Yu Qianqiu reached his hand behind him. The Fire Soul Xian soldier behind him handed over a large machete condensed from Samadhi True Fire. Yu Qianqiu took the machete and stabbed it into the ground. He then patted the two of them on the shoulder and slowly pushed them away. He then slowly walked between the mother and daughter to the front and turned around to look at them with an ashen face. Millions of cultivators in the human realm were slaughtered by Yan Zhuixing and the others. I watched them die without being able to do anything. I overestimated myself and harmed them. The two of you are the most innocent people. It is also I, Yu Qianqiu, who has wronged you. Today will be the day that I, Yu Qianqiu, will never be able to rest in peace for the rest of my life. Yan Zhuixing has the protection of a demon god. I may not be able to kill him, but I will make him unable to eat or sleep in peace for the rest of his life. I will make him unable to escape from his nightmares. I will make him cry every day in his dreams. I want to see if he still has the face to become the next demon king of the demon realm. As soon as he finished speaking, Yu Qianqiu's hands reached for the collars of the mother and daughter. Under the horrified eyes of the two, he grabbed their collars and tore them apart. Shwa shwa sounds rang out and the torn clothes fluttered in the air. Two curvaceous and alluring naked bodies appeared in the wind that was filled with the smell of blood. Crystal tears rolled down from the eyes of the two. Yu Qianqiu turned a blind eye to them. Her son also took a step forward and pointed at Yu Qianqiu's nose and shouted angrily, "To think that my father still treats you as a brother. But what do you think we are? I know that you are a vicious and merciless person, but our family is not afraid of death. Make things clear today. Either you let us go or you kill our entire family in front of everyone." Everyone's expression changed. They did not know what was going on. Yu Qianqiu was stunned for a while. Then he looked at his family and sighed, "I don't blame you. It's all my fault. It's all my fault." Before he could finish, his chest suddenly rose and fell rapidly. He spat out a mouthful of blood in front of everyone. His eyes closed and his body fell backward. Chapter 1191. Yu Qianqiu. A wave of exclamations rang out from all directions. Fortunately, Bai Sujin and Chu Ping-er were supporting Yu Qianqiu, who had collapsed. Everyone instantly surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who had fainted from vomiting blood. In an instant, chaos ensued. Everyone anxiously asked him what was wrong and if he was injured. The unshaven Qin Feng suddenly raised his head, his face filled with sorrow and helplessness. Xiao Wanqing and her son looked at each other in shock. They didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so easily scolded to the point of vomiting blood and fainting. Things seemed to have really gotten out of hand. The two of them instantly panicked. They originally thought that by dragging Qin Feng along, Yu Qianqiu wouldn't dare to do anything to them in public. However, if they were to really be struck by lightning, it would be strange for the mother and son not to be afraid. Hong Tailong was also extremely anxious. Yu Qianzhou's mission of punishing on behalf of the heavens had yet to be completed. If something happened to Yu Qianzhou, he really wouldn't be able to report back. In a panic, he squeezed into the group of women and grabbed Yu Qianzhou to quickly examine him. How are they? The group of people looked at this expert anxiously. They aren't injured. Hong Tailong shook his head. However, his expression was somewhat grave as he said, however, they have nowhere to vent their grief and indignation, so they fell ill from depression. This is even more troublesome. Mental illness is incurable and cultivators are most afraid of this. If they can't walk out from their mental demons and fall into oblivion, they will be no different from the living dead. So, how bitter is this mental illness? How did it end up like this? In the next moment, everyone's gazes turned to the family of three. Many people's eyes were almost spitting fire, as if they wanted to skin the three of them alive. Chen Feng's head slowly pressed down again. Xiao Wanqing and her son couldn't hide the fear in their eyes. At this moment, Chu Ping suddenly squeezed out of the crowd. With tears in her eyes, she said in grief and indignation, "What are you guys trying to do? I've already promised him that I'll help you talk to him and beg him to let you out. Why don't you give him any face at all?" Xiao Wanqing's imposing manner weakened a little as she said, "How many times have you promised him? It's been so many years and there has been no news from you. Other than saying that he hasn't come back, you're just saying that he hasn't come back. He comes and goes without a trace. How do we know if he really hasn't come back, or if he has come back and you didn't tell us, or if he didn't agree? Now that we know he's back, we naturally have to seek justice from him." Justice? Wei Chuanxiu stared at the three of them with a cold glint in his eyes. And Xiao Wanqing's family of three left with their tails between their legs. Everyone crowded around Yu Qianzhou and carried him into the room of the Misty Palace. When they placed him on the bed, they discovered that his face was deathly pale, but his cheeks had an intoxicating redness, which was extremely abnormal. It was a sign of his corporeal body's final radiance. Hong Tailong sucked in a breath of cold air and said angrily, "What is this guy trying to do? Is he trying to end his own life? Hurry up and help him circulate his body's functions. This guy is seeking death to end all his troubles." Everyone was taken aback and fought to lend a hand. Hong Tailong immediately roared, "So many of you attacking randomly. Do you want to cripple his physical body? Everyone take turns. He already has the intention to seek death, and is unwilling to circulate his body normally. Anyway, everyone take turns. Don't let his body stop circulating normally." Everyone was submissive, and the few ladies were so anxious that they started crying. In the end, the 100 Charms beauty was the first to benefit from the situation. She supported the unconscious Yu Qianzhou and circulated her energy to circulate his body normally. B*****. Hong Tailong paced back and forth in the room, cursing incessantly. What did this two-faced, vicious and merciless fellow do? Quite a number of people have died. Everyone can understand the sadness in his heart. After all, none of us feel good about it. But with this guy's thick skin, he shouldn't be unable to take the blow of failure, right? If that's really the case, this old dragon really can't imagine how he managed to survive until now. What did this guy do, or what did he encounter? Right at this moment, the room suddenly fell silent. Everyone's gazes were focused on Yu Qianzhou. They heard him mumbling, and everyone immediately focused their attention to listen. Unfortunately, the words were too vague and they couldn't hear them clearly. Suddenly, a mumble that sounded like laughter was heard clearly. "Zixia, your butt is so bouncy. Let me have a taste of those 2 lumps on your chest." The room instantly became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. The group of women who were choking with sobs stopped crying. Everyone looked at each other, thinking that they had heard wrongly. However, from everyone's expressions, they could tell that they hadn't heard wrongly. Finally, everyone looked at Hong Tailong suspiciously, doubting his words. A person who could say such words while unconscious, would he have the intention to seek death? Hong Tailong was even more dumbfounded. Yan Yu, who was sitting on the bed, suddenly smiled through her tears and said, "This dead man really doesn't change his lust. He's already like this, but he's still thinking about those messy things even in his dreams." Suddenly, everyone exclaimed in unison, "Not good." Chapter 1192. It's not like I don't want him to wake up as soon as possible. If something happens to him, how am I going to answer to Lord Demonic God of the deity realm? Demon Lord 3 Knights let out a long sigh, turned around and slowly walked out. When he reached the empty myriad sacred palace, he suddenly looked at floating cloud and gray dog outside the door and said, "The blue sea essence can cleanse the physical body and mind. It should be able to wake him up. It seems like this is the only way." Eunuch Li, who was following behind him, frowned and said, "Even if we find the blue sea essence, he is still unconscious. He can't resist the corrosion of the blue sea essence on his mind. Can he withstand it? What if he loses his mind? You must know that Lord Demonic God also lost his mind because he couldn't resist it. He lost his mind and killed his wife, unable to differentiate between friend and foe. This was also because Lord Demonic God's mind was strong enough to forcefully reverse the situation. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. I also don't want to take this risk, but we can't just watch and do nothing, right?" Demon Lord Three Knights turned back to look at him, then looked into the distance and said in a deep voice, "The reason why Lord Demonic God chose him must be because his mind is strong enough to withstand the torture of the 7-star acupoint piercing art. With this strong will, I think he might be able to withstand it." "Vice Palace Lord, it's not a solution to continue dragging this out. Since Demon Lord has made his decision, I'll make the arrangements now." After Eunuch Li obtained the decree, he quickly made preparations to head to the Blue Sea Death Trap. In Utopia's Misty Palace, Yu Qianqiu had also been unconscious for more than 10 days. A few women took turns to watch over him and they were all a little anxious. At this moment, Yu Qianqiu's mind was filled with the ambiguous scenes of him and Yan Zixia on Fuxian Island. The two of them lived a blissful life in the Mulberry Garden and lived a world of their own until they grew old. There were no grudges or disturbances. None of the people he knew before or after appeared in his dream. Even Hibiscus, who should have appeared in the Mulberry Garden, did not exist, let alone Yan Zhuixing. There seemed to be no messy people in his memory. While the two of them were strolling by the seaside, the romantic sea in front of them suddenly became turbulent. In the blink of an eye, the wind and clouds changed abruptly. The entire sea suddenly turned blood red. It had already become a vast sea of blood. Yan Zixia, who was holding his arm, suddenly turned into an incomparably ferocious blood snake. She tightly coiled around him, trying to drill into his 7 orifices. Yu Qianqiu turned pale with fright. He felt that this scene was very familiar. All of a sudden, a boundless golden light rose from the sea of blood. Wherever the golden light shone, the blood snake turned into smoke that wailed mournfully. The endless sea of blood dissipated. The last golden light shone directly on his glabella. Yu Qianqiu instantly woke up from his slumber. He recalled the scene where he was struck by Yan Zhuixing's demonic eye. B*****. Yu Qianqiu bellowed angrily. He opened his eyes abruptly and sat up from the bed. As he looked around furiously, he saw many familiar faces looking at him in panic. They seemed to be extremely anxious and afraid. Hong Tailong and the rest, who were helpless outside, suddenly heard Yu Qianqiu's loud voice. They immediately returned and swarmed into the room. "What am I doing?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned when he saw everyone. He recalled the cause and effect of the matter. Suddenly, he raised his hand and slapped his forehead. He smiled bitterly and said, "I had such a long dream. What are you all doing here?" As he said that, he jumped off the bed. Hong Tailong came over with a face full of suspicion. He observed carefully and asked, "Are you really all right? F***ck your crow's beak. What could possibly happen to this daddy?" Yu Qianqiu spat. When everyone heard him curse again, they immediately felt relieved. They confirmed that he was really all right. Hong Tailong circled around him and sized him up. He clicked his tongue and said, "Brat, you vomited blood and fainted. You slept for almost half a month. You made us worried to death. Previously you were half dead. Who would have thought that you would be alive and kicking in the blink of an eye? Looks like we were worried for nothing." "I slept for half a month?" Yu Qianqiu moved his slightly stiff body and said in astonishment. Seeing everyone staring at him and nodding in agreement, he fell silent and thought about what had happened. After a long while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head with a pensive expression. He said, "I was so angry. I can't bear to look back on it." Everyone had roughly guessed what he had done. They were afraid that he would take things too hard, so they advised him to let bygones be bygones and not take it to heart. Yu Qianqiu couldn't help but miss those who had passed away even more as he listened to the assortment of comforting voices and looked at the concerned faces around him. Then he recalled that Xiao Wanqing's family had come to make a scene before he fainted. He hurriedly asked Chu Pinger how the matter had been handled. Chu Pinger looked at Bai Suzhen, and Bai Suzhen immediately told her about her reply to their family. Yu Qianqiu fell silent for a moment before slowly saying, Gather all the cultivators in Utopia to the military camp. I'll talk to them. Chu Ping immediately made the arrangements. Not long after, all the cultivators in Utopia gathered in the spacious military drill ground. About 90% of the hero army had been lost, and there were only about 1,000 people left. Now, there were more women than men in Utopia. The crowd below the stage watched as Yu Qianqiu slowly ascended the stage by himself. Standing firmly in the center of the stage, Yu Qianqiu scanned the crowd below. His gaze fell on Xiao Wanqing's family of 3 in the front row. It's understandable that some people want to leave Utopia and regain their freedom. I won't force them. A forceful melon won't be sweet, and it might even cause a rift. I can send you out, but on account of our past friendship, there are some things I have to make clear, lest it's too late for you to regret it. Yu Qianqiu's gaze slowly shifted away from the family of 3. He looked at everyone and continued, perhaps everyone doesn't know the situation outside. Now that the 3 realms are in chaos and the demonic path is rampant, countless people have died under the demonic claws. There's something I have to admit. Before I returned, because of my mistake, millions of cultivators in the human world died. You can't imagine how arrogant the demonic flames are. Therefore, I advise everyone that Utopia is the safest place. There's no need for everyone to take the risk. Furthermore, I can guarantee that from today onwards, everyone can live freely in Utopia. I will definitely not use anything to interfere with everyone. Of course. If anyone has any trouble, you can look for Ethereal Palace to resolve it. Ethereal Palace will not ignore it. What do you think? Everyone did not expect their leader to say such a thing. They looked at each other. Xiao Wanqing suddenly took a step forward and said aggressively, from what you said, could it be that you want to persuade us to stay? That's indeed what I mean. Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, I really don't want to see the people in Utopia suffer any more losses. I hope you can understand my painstaking efforts. If you don't believe me, you can ask the heroic team members who survived. They have personally experienced what happened outside. Yu Qianqiu. Xiao Wanqing's son shouted. He called out Yu Qianqiu's name and stood up. He angrily pointed at the few remaining members of the Hero Legion and angrily said, they are all your people, and they know that you are vicious and merciless. Didn't they say whatever you said and speak up for you? If you don't want to let us out, just say it. Why do you have to beat around the bush? It's beneath your status and you'll become a laughing stock. This fellow had heard and witnessed his mother's curse at Yu Qianqiu since he was young. As time passed, he had almost treated Yu Qianqiu as an irreconcilable enemy. He had no choice but to win against Yu Qianqiu. Otherwise, it would be strange if he did not cut Yu Qianqiu into pieces. The moment he said that, Bai Sujin and the rest wore hostile expressions. Even Hong Tailong and the others who had come to Utopia for the first time could not stand this kid. It was one thing for him to say such words if he had the ability, but he was so stubborn even though he did not have the ability. Wasn't he courting death? Yu Qianqiu glared at Qin Feng with a cold light in his eyes. So many people had died and he was still angry. However, when he saw Qin Feng's dispirited expression, he suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a cold smile, Brat. The number of people I've killed is more than the number of people you've met in your entire life combined. If I want to kill you, I can do it with a flick of my finger. It's even easier than stepping on an ant. Today, on account of your father, I won't hold it against a junior like you. Hearing Yu Qianqiu threaten her son, Xiao Wanqing roared hysterically, Bai Sujin. You promised to let us go to the celestial world. Why didn't you keep your word? Hong Tailong and the group of people who had experienced life and death outside shook their heads when they heard this. Bai Sujin was just about to reply when Yu Qianqiu pressed his hand down, indicating that he should handle it. Qin Feng. I'll only ask you one question. Yu Qianqiu stared at Qin Feng and said in a deep voice, if you say leave, I'll let your family go. If you say stay, I'll let your family stay. You're the head of the family. I can ignore the rude words of this mother and son pair. I only need to see your attitude before making a decision. The unshaven Qin Feng hugged his wine gourd and looked up at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. When Xiao Wanqing saw his cowardly expression, her anger flared up. She regretted that she was blinded by greed and agreed to marry this useless thing. Xiao Wanqing turned around and pulled Qin Feng to the front in front of everyone. She said sternly, You've been a coward your whole life. Do you want us to be cowardly forever? Father. The outside world is so big. There's a place for us to stay. Why do we have to stay here and live our lives under the whims of others? His son stomped his feet at Qin Feng in exasperation. The mother and son sandwiched Qin Feng in the middle and bombarded his ears left and right. Qin Feng seemed to turn a deaf ear to them and stared straight at Yu Qianqiu. Only when Xiao Wanqing nudged him again did he silently nod at Yu Qianqiu. Qin Feng, your family really wants to go to the celestial world? I've said everything that needs to be said. Are you sure you won't regret it? Once I let you go, I won't care about you anymore. Yu Qianqiu reminded again. Yu Qianqiu. Xiao Wanqing gritted her teeth and said, why do you have to scare an honest man? Do you have any credibility? As long as you don't scheme against us, what do we have to regret? Are you going to let us go or not? Chapter 1193. Plotting against you? Yu Qianqiu sneered in disdain. He couldn't be bothered to argue with this woman. He looked at Qin Feng and shook his head. Since you've already made up your mind, I have nothing else to say. I'll send you to the celestial world later. After saying that, he looked at everyone and said, who else is willing to go to the celestial world? Just say it. I'll send you all away together. Everyone, there's no need to worry. If you want to leave, just say it. I, Yu Qianqiu, swear to the heavens that I'll definitely not harm you behind your backs. As soon as he swore, there were a lot of people who were ready to make a move. Xiao Wanqing looked back a few times and saw several women who had a good relationship with her were trembling with fear. Obviously, they also wanted to leave this place. Seeing that someone had taken the lead, over 100 people came out one after another. There were men and women, and they stood in a group below the stage. All of them seemed uneasy. The hero army that had returned from outside naturally remained indifferent. They knew that Yu Qianqiu was speaking the truth. It was indeed too dangerous outside. Yu Qianqiu looked down and sighed inwardly. It seemed like a forceful melon was not sweet. There were still many people who were dissatisfied with him. After a moment he sighed and said, everyone disperse. I won't stop you if you want to leave. Go back and pack your things first. As long as you feel that the things in Utopia are useful to you, you can take them away. I'll give you an hour to pack. I'll wait for you here. After saying that, he closed his eyes. Everyone looked at each other and many revealed looks of joy. It seemed like he was really going to let them leave. Otherwise, there was no need for him to let them pack their things. The crowd immediately dispersed one after another, leaving only Qin Feng on the stage. Hong Tailong and the others looked at each other. No one went to disturb Yu Qianqiu, who was on the stage. Qin Feng looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was no longer the same as before. He was in a daze as he recalled how he had been abducted when they first met in the 100 Flowers Valley. Back then he had been a little unhappy, but thinking back before he had followed Yu Qianqiu, his days outside had been very miserable, and he had relied on a small stall to make a living. In fact, after coming here he had been the most carefree. However, after marrying Xiao Wanqing, he had started to become more and more unhappy. Boss. Qin Feng suddenly called out to Yu Qianqiu, who had his eyes closed and was silent on the stage. Yu Qianqiu's eyelids trembled, and he slowly opened his eyes to look at him. In the end, he gently landed beside him from the stage and took out the wine gourd that Qin Feng was hugging. With a flash of true samadhi fire in his hand, he instantly turned it into ashes. Then he patted Qin Feng's shoulder and said, pull yourself together after you go out. Don't drink anymore. Although the immortal world is dangerous, there's still a way out. If it's possible, I still want to persuade you to stay. Boss. Qin Feng smiled bitterly. The mother and son are determined. It's useless to say anything. Yu Qianqiu really wanted to scold him for being a good-for-nothing, but he held back in the end. After thinking for a while, he seriously warned, if you encounter danger in the immortal world, you can say my name and say that you're my people. Even if you end up in the hands of the demonic path, when they hear that you're my people, they'll definitely want to use you as hostages to threaten me. At the very least, they won't harm your lives. Whatever they ask you, just tell them the truth. They won't be able to enter Utopia, so you can suffer less. After that, I'll think of a way to save you. Qin Feng's eyes were red as he looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was so emotional that he couldn't speak. Hong Tailong and the rest sighed and shook their heads when they heard that. They deeply felt that Yu Qianqiu was looking for trouble for them. Guan Yu, who was standing beside Bai Sujin, also sighed slightly. To be honest, he didn't really believe Yu Qianqiu's words before, but now he believed it. An hour passed very quickly, and the people who wanted to leave came back one after another. This time there were more than 100 people. They were people who wanted to leave but were afraid that Yu Qianqiu would go back on his word. However, when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was really going to let them go, there were more than 200 people in front of them, and most of them were women. Everyone had brought enough things that they could take with them, especially Xiao Wanqing and her son, who were carrying bags of all sizes. Their bodies were also bulging. Qin Feng scanned them with his divine sense and realized that they were filled with bulging storage bags. He did not know how much valuable utopia had they brought with them. He immediately pointed at their bags in shame and said with a red face, You. He was so angry that he could not speak. Xiao Wanqing looked at Yu Qianqiu and snorted coldly. You've served him for so many years and worked hard without any complaints. Even if you don't make any contributions, you've worked hard. You deserve what you've taken. Do you really think that you can live empty-handed in the immortal world? If you don't prepare more things, what are you going to do in the future? Are you going to continue begging for food when you go to the immortal world? All right. Stop arguing, Qin Feng. She's right, Yu Qianqiu said indifferently. Qin Feng instantly felt ashamed. He sighed and stomped his feet without saying anything. Everyone, you'll know when you get to the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu reminded them one last time. He opened his hand and enveloped the 200 people with his divine sense, instantly sending them away. These 200 people had indeed been sent to the immortal world by Yu Qianqiu. They appeared in the valley where Yu Qianqiu had first arrived in the immortal world. Yu Qianqiu hoped that they would have a good omen so that they could start from the beginning and go further. He really didn't have any ill intentions towards them. At the same time, this place was not far from the small town where the Four Links Chamber of Commerce was located. However, they didn't seem to be as lucky as Yu Qianqiu. The moment they appeared in the valley, they heard the sounds of intense fighting coming from afar. Their expressions instantly changed. Everyone rushed to the top of the mountain to take a look. They discovered that the fighting had quickly ended, and most of the small town in front of them had been reduced to ruins. Suddenly, a figure flashed by and fell into the valley. He was covered in blood and panting heavily. It was Four Links Chamber of Commerce's Nan Tianlong. He had lost an arm. Qin Feng gathered his courage and led the way down. He helped Nan Tianlong up and asked, "What is this place?" A group of people also followed. Immortal World's Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Nan Tianlong didn't think too much about why the other party would ask such a question. Instead, he grabbed Qin Feng's arm and begged, "The demonic path massacred my Four Links Chamber of Commerce and captured my junior sister. Who can help me find my son-in-law Wu Xiong in the netherworld and ask for help? My son-in-law will reward you greatly." Everyone jumped in fright. They encountered a massacre from the demonic path as soon as they arrived. It turned out that Yu Qianqiu wasn't trying to scare them. The demonic path was indeed very arrogant in the immortal world. Qin Feng absent-mindedly pushed Nan Tianlong away. He looked at his wife and son, whose faces were pale. He smiled bitterly and said, "Are you satisfied now? Bastards. They actually managed to escape from a small Four Links Chamber of Commerce. Search everywhere. Those who dare to stubbornly resist our demonic path army cannot be left alive." An angry shout that caused everyone's hearts to tremble came from afar. The people in the valley immediately ran for their lives. However, the people who were searching soon arrived in the sky above them. When they saw the people running away, they immediately laughed and called out to their companions, "There are actually so many women. We can't touch that moo bitch, but we can at least touch them." A dozen people quickly rushed over. The cultivation of the people from Utopia was too low. How could they outrun these people from the demonic path? Fortunately, they had more people. There were more than 200 of them. They scattered and fled in panic. These dozen people really couldn't take care of them all at once. However, these people's gazes were all attracted by the big and small bags on Xiao Wanqing and her son. They thought that they contained something valuable. These demonic path people didn't hide their greed. They didn't give in to each other and wanted to take it for themselves. They actually all chased after the family of three. They quickly caught up to them. Qin Feng overestimated himself and wanted to stop them to buy time for his wife and son. In the end, he was killed on the spot because he resisted. It was unknown why he didn't say the words that Yu Qianqiu told him in time to save his life. Perhaps he didn't have the time, or perhaps he didn't want to say it. The mother and son were quickly caught up and restrained. The dozen people fought over the things in Xiao Wanqing and her son's bags. Some sharp-eyed people discovered that the mother and son's clothes were also stuffed with things. They tore off their clothes on the spot. The man's naked body was still okay, but Xiao Wanqing's appearance was indeed not bad. Her snow-white and plump chest immediately attracted the unscrupulous demonic fanatic's lustful lust. They immediately stripped her naked and took turns to defile her. Because her son's cries of sorrow and blood disturbed others' fun, he was chopped into two without any reason. After being abused by the group of demons, Xiao Wanqing, who had fainted, didn't have a way out. After they were done, she was chopped into 8 pieces. In fact, if it wasn't for the mother and son carrying too many things that attracted the attention of the demonic path people, they might have been able to escape like the others. Although they didn't know what their future would be, at least they would be safe for the time being. But then again, they had attracted the attention of the demonic path people, which was equivalent to saving the lives of others. It could be said that they died a worthy death. In the ruined Four Links Chamber of Commerce, the restrained Mu Tianjiao wanted to cry as she looked at the cold-faced demon who stood with his hands behind his back. She originally wanted to commit suicide so that she wouldn't fall into the hands of the demonic path, but her reaction was too slow and she was restrained on the spot. Little did she know that the person standing in front of her was the domineering Great Demon King under Demon King 3 Knights. His cultivation level was much higher than hers. Once he saw that she had thoughts of committing suicide, he restrained her at lightning speed, causing Mu Tianjiao's plan to fail. You can't die now. You might be of some use when we attack the Netherworld Divine Manor. If you're useless, it won't be too late for you to die then. After saying that, the domineering Great Demon King grabbed her and flew away. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianqiu was still standing on the general roll call without saying a word. He didn't know that they had encountered trouble after sending Qin Feng and the others out. After standing silently for a long time, he suddenly gritted his teeth with a gloomy expression. The lives of 1,000,000 cultivators. Even if Wenrui revealed the secret of the base, it's impossible for Wenrui to open the sealed Divine Ruin Realm. I still can't figure out how 3 knights and the others entered the Divine Ruin Realm. After flying for an entire day above the boundless sea, the azure sea in front of them suddenly turned into a bright snow-blue color. The two of them exchanged a glance and knew that they had arrived at the extraterritorial blue sea. The reason why this sea had turned into a snow-blue color was because of the legendary meteorites sleeping in the depths of the sea. The sky was high and the sea was wide. Sporadic islands would occasionally pass by below them. This was not the first time the two of them had come here. They knew that once they stepped into the extraterritorial blue sea, they would be on the edge of danger. No matter how high their cultivation was, they did not dare to be careless here. So they slowed down their flying speed. A few hours later, the Inferno Mystic Weapon was driving the flying shuttle, carrying Yu Qianqiu, and was also flying over here. Yu Qianqiu had asked Wei Chuanqiu about the approximate location of the Blue Sea Death Realm. Then he came alone with the Inferno Mystic Weapon. Hong Tailong wanted to join in the fun, but Yu Qianqiu considered that he had not recovered from his injuries. Furthermore, it would be a burden if they ran into danger. So he let Hong Tailong recuperate in peace in Utopia. This was the first time Yu Qianqiu had arrived at the immortal world's boundless sea death realm. With the protection of the mid-stage Great God Inferno Mystic Weapon, he was in the mood to look around. The moment he entered the snow-blue sea, he slowed down his flying speed after receiving Wei Chuanqiu's reminder. When they encountered sporadic islands, he would occasionally throw a small silver ball down for safety purposes. The two people in front and him behind did not know that the other party had come here. When ferocious brown reefs appeared in the sea in front of them, the expressions of the 3 knights Demon Lord and Eunuchly turned solemn. They flew forward slowly and carefully. This was the famous Blue Sea Death Realm of the 3 realms. Once they entered this realm, they would feel a bone-chilling murderous intent. The blue waves of seawater washed over all sorts of strange-looking jagged rocks. All sorts of strange rocks were filled with crisscrossing holes. It was unknown how they were formed. When the sea breeze blew past, it would produce all sorts of strange sounds that were either sharp or howling. Some of the islands that were submerged in seawater were also filled with holes of various sizes. Seawater flowed in and out of the holes. There was not even a flying seabird in sight. There were no living creatures on the dilapidated islands. It was a scene of death. Xiao xiao. Suddenly, countless snow-blue rays of light shot out from the ocean, shooting in all directions. Demon Lord 3 knights and Eunuchly were greatly alarmed. There was no other reason for the two of them to feel that something was wrong. They had already experienced Yu Qianqiu's godly methods. Since the other party dared to rush here, it meant that they weren't afraid of the fatal light beams of the Blue Sea Death Realm. At this moment, the intention of chasing them was very clear. He clearly wanted to use the fatal light beams of the Blue Sea Death Realm to kill the two of them. The two of them were truly shocked by Yu Qianqiu. Looking around at this desolate death realm, the two of them didn't have the guts to rush here like Yu Qianqiu. If they were to encounter the explosion of the fatal light beams at the bottom of the sea, they would die. Thus the two of them could only remain unchanging. Demon Monarch 3 Knights gnashed his teeth in hatred and said, Bastard, how did he know we were here? The Fire Soul Profound Weapon's flying speed wasn't slow. After the two of them closed the distance, Yu Qianzhou's eyes immediately went wide when he saw the appearance of the two people in front of him. The Fire Soul Profound Weapon, which was connected to his mind, immediately stopped. At this moment, the two of them were less than 1,000 meters apart. Both of them were staring at each other, clearly caught unprepared. At the same time, both of them could see the clues from the other's expression. It was obvious that they had accidentally bumped into each other. However, what three knights and Eunuch couldn't understand was, why did he dare to rush here? Yu Qianzhou's first reaction was whether or not to run. After he calmed down, he realized that Eunuch was carrying the unconscious Yan Zhuoxing on his back. Then he wondered why the two of them brought Yan Zhuoxing here. Then he realized that these two experts were just watching him without making a move. Yu Qianzhou was even more certain that there was something fishy going on. His eyes turned, and with the thought of escaping if he discovered something was wrong, he actually gathered his courage and approached the two of them step by step. Suddenly, a strange light flashed at the bottom of the sea. Xiao xiao, countless snow-blue light beams shot into the sky. Yu Qianzhou finally saw the terrifying light beams that Wei Chuanqiu had mentioned. With a thought, the Fire Soul Profound Weapon carried him to quickly dodge. Three knights and Eunuch were naturally no exception. After several waves of attacks broke out at the bottom of the sea, Yu Qianzhou was so scared that he was drenched in sweat. He took some time to take out a piece of extraterrestrial metal essence to experiment. He found that the snow-blue light beams could easily make a hole in the extraterrestrial metal essence like cutting tofu. Now he finally understood how the hole on the crisscrossed reef came to be. He also understood why three knights and the others didn't dare to act rashly. It felt like he was holding his head and forcing himself to come here. It was 2F** King scary. Three knights and Eunuch could roughly guess why he dared to rush just now. It turned out that he didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. Eunuch sneered, "Devil Monarch, should we take this opportunity to kill this thief?" Chapter 1195. That was exactly what Demon Lord Three Knights was thinking, but just as he had the thought, a few more waves of snow-blue light shot out from the bottom of the sea. After dodging for a while, Third Knight glanced at the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier protecting Yu Qianzhou. It wasn't a wise move to fight with that monster here. In addition, he knew that Yu Qianzhou had the ability to come and go without a trace. He probably wouldn't be able to do anything to him for a while, so why take the risk? This isn't a good place to fight. Let's continue. Ignore him for now. We'll deal with him when we have the chance. Demon Lord Three Knights called out and continued flying forward with Eunuch, who was carrying Yan Zhuoxing on his back. Yu Qianzhou's heart was pounding from the sudden appearance of this deadly thing. He was indeed thinking of retreating, but when he saw the two fellows carrying the unconscious Yan Zhuoxing deeper into the death trap, it was truly suspicious. He had already vaguely guessed that they were also here to search for the blue sea gold essence. He didn't want to see a second demon god appear in the three realms, so he immediately gritted his teeth and followed. The two parties continued advancing through the extremely dangerous blue sea death trap, one in front and one behind. After an entire day, the two parties finally entered the central region of the blue sea death trap. In the periphery, the deadly snow-blue light pillars would explode intermittently, but in the central region they would constantly appear. They would randomly shoot out in all directions, alternating with each other. Although it wasn't a collective explosion, it was even more impossible to figure out a pattern. If one wasn't careful, they would collide with one. When an island with a radius of more than 10 kilometers appeared in front of them, Yu Qianzhou watched as Third Knight and Eunuch landed on the island. From the lush vegetation on the island, he could tell that the island was a relatively large dead zone in the blue sea death trap. Although there were deadly light pillars crisscrossing above the island was safe. And under the seawater, there was a dazzling snow-blue light, which allowed Yu Qianzhou to guess that they had arrived at their destination. However, what made Yu Qianzhou speechless was the fact that San Yi and the other man were standing on the island with a sneer on their faces, glaring at him like a tiger watching its prey. Yu Qianzhou cursed inwardly, "This is bad. I'm afraid that these two guys won't let me safely land on the island." Thus, he tried to enter the island from the other side. As he expected, the two of them leisurely wandered across the island and waited for his arrival. After the two of them accompanied Yu Qianzhou for a few rounds, Three Knights Demon Lord looked at Yu Qianzhou and laughed, "Yu Qianzhou, I want to see how long you can last outside." "What a joke. I can hold on as long as I want." Yu Qianzhou was not satisfied with his stubborn mouth, so he teased, If I really can't hold on any longer, and if an accident really happens, I guarantee that you will never know the whereabouts of your son Yi Tiankong. Don't try to fool me with this. 3 Knights Demon Lord sneered. If Konger could cultivate, I might be able to be fooled by you. Unfortunately, he was born without the ability to cultivate. Even with miraculous medicine, he won't be able to live past 200 years. You're just a little thief who's still wet behind his ears. I don't know where you've heard of my son's name, but you're acting all mysterious. It's a pity that you only know the surface but don't know the inside story. You're like a jumping clown showing off in front of this lord. Do I look like a jumping clown? Yu Qianqiu looked at himself, then clicked his tongue and said, "What bullshit, Demon Lord, you're just a frog at the bottom of a well. This lord is in a good mood today, so I'll let you broaden your horizons." He revealed a teasing expression and sighed. The God Realm's dragon race has a great technique called the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique. Even the common peddlers of the mortal world can be imbued with cultivation. I wonder if you, the so-called Demon Lord 3 Knights, have heard of it? The moment he said this, the expressions of Demon Lord 3 Knights and Eunuch Li changed at the same time. The former suddenly shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, is what you're saying true?" Ever since 3 Knights heard Eunuch Li mention that Yu Qianqiu mentioned Yi Tiankong after the illusory immortal city was destroyed, he had kept this matter in his heart. He felt that Yu Qianqiu wouldn't mention his son for no reason. There had to be a reason, but he hadn't found a suitable opportunity to chat with Yu Qianqiu. Now was a good opportunity, so he naturally wanted to test the truth. He didn't expect to hear the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique. His heartbeat immediately sped up. What did I say? I didn't say anything. Yu Qianqiu revealed a very surprised expression, then looked at himself up and down and said with a wronged expression, "I'm just a jumping clown. I'm just showing off blindly. As for whether people believe me or not, it's none of my business. Anyway, Yi Tiankong isn't my son, hee." Demon Lord 3 Knights wanted nothing more than to slap him into a pulp. Ever since he ascended to the throne of Demon Lord, this was the first time someone dared to tease him in front of his face. He resisted the urge to kill and said in a low voice, "You mean to say that Yi Tiankong received the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique and has a cultivation base, so he's still alive?" Yu Qianqiu immediately cackled and said, "As for whether your son is still alive or not, I don't know. I only know that there's a guy who can't cultivate but likes to swindle people. He comes from the demon realm and his name is Yi Tiankong. He tricked a divine dragon into using the Divine Dragon Empowerment Technique and gave him an early small god cultivation base. TSK impressive." The expressions of the two people on the island changed again. They knew better than anyone what kind of person Yi Tiankong was. He indeed liked to play tricks and swindle people. Yu Qianqiu had already made it so obvious. Even if he deliberately refused to admit it, how could the two not know that he was talking about Yi Tiankong, who had mysteriously disappeared in the demon realm? Yi Tiankong had an early small god cultivation base, so he naturally wouldn't die unless something unexpected happened. Demon Lord 3 Knights' calm face twitched and he said through gritted teeth, "Don't beat around the bush. If Yi Tiankong is still alive, where is he?" "I forgot." Yu Qianqiu, who had just dodged a wave of fatal light beams, said angrily, "Damn it. You're standing on the island leisurely while I'm risking my life here. How can I have the mood to chat with you?" "I forgot. You're my enemy, there's nothing to talk about with you. I'll just go back." The Flame Soul Profound weapon really did take him back. Demon Lord 3 Knights immediately lost his temper. With a pained expression he said sternly, "Stop. I'll let you go to the island." "Damn it. The island isn't yours. It's not up to you to decide. If I want to go, I'll go." Yu Qianqiu's mouth was stubborn, but the Flame Soul Profound weapon still took him away. He wanted to take the opportunity to plant a silver ball on the island as a teleportation coordinate. In the future he could do it anytime and anywhere. If he planted it nearby, he was afraid that one day he would accidentally teleport out and be shot into a bloody hole by the fatal light beam. However, as soon as he turned around, his eyes immediately froze. He stared straight at the island. On the tallest tree in the center of the island, there was a person standing there. Demon Monarch 3 Knights and Eunuch Li quickly turned their heads to look up and were also shocked. They saw a slender man in white standing quietly on the treetop looking at them. His snow-blue waist-length hair fluttered in the wind. His snow-blue eyebrows flew steeply to his temples. His eyes were also emitting a snow-blue cold light. On his cold cheeks, his lips were slightly snow-blue, and there was a light blue cloud pattern in the center of his forehead. His expression was cold and incomparably lonely as he stood there silently, like a demon or a god. Even Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuch Li did not notice any movement when he appeared on the island. The two looked carefully and found that they could not see the depth of his cultivation. The shock in their hearts was indescribable. They did not know when such an expert appeared in the three realms. It was not strange that the two did not recognize this person, but Yu Qianqiu was all too familiar with this person. It was actually Wen Lanfeng, who had been missing for many years. To be precise, Yu Qianqiu also suspected that this person was Wen Lanfeng. They indeed looked exactly the same, but that lonely temperament between heaven and earth was not something that Wen Lanfeng possessed. What made Yu Qianqiu most suspicious was the snow-blue long hair and the abnormality between his brows. It made him not completely certain that this person was Wen Lanfeng, who had been missing for many years. "Who are you?" Demon Lord Three Knights asked solemnly. He sensed an extremely dangerous aura from this person, and so did Eunuch Li. The two were on unprecedented high alert. "Who am I?" The person's snow-blue eyes revealed a trace of doubt, but his magnetic voice sounded like cold metal. "I hate it when people ask me such questions. It makes me very uncomfortable, so I'm going to kill you." The person's body suddenly burst forth with a suffocating murderous aura, filling the world. He suddenly waved a finger, and a startling snow-blue sword shadow burst forth from his fingertip, causing the world to change color. It directly slashed towards Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuch Li like a thunderbolt. The two were shocked, and knowing that they were no match for this person, they quickly dodged. Without saying a word, they braved the great danger and quickly rushed to the surface to escape. The person's fingertip gently hooked, and the incomparably powerful startling sword shadow was unexpectedly withdrawn, suddenly disappearing without a trace. Two fingers simultaneously bent and flicked, and two slender snow-blue sword lights chased after them at an unbelievable speed. Sky-breaking blood. Demon Lord Three Knights shouted, and the scarlet cloak on his shoulder suddenly fell off and expanded, instantly turning into an incomparably magnificent wall of blood light, cutting across the sea. Boom! Blue light and blood-red light shone everywhere, and countless fine red cloths fluttered in the air, perishing together with the two slender sword lights. Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuch Li instantly disappeared into the distance. Their luck was not bad, and they actually did not encounter the fatal light pillar erupting from the bottom of the sea. Yu Qianqiu was shocked. He didn't expect this person to be so powerful. With a flick of his finger, he was able to make Demon King Three Knight and Eunuch Li flee in panic. They didn't even have the courage to fight him. Just how terrifying was his cultivation. However, what shocked Yu Qianqiu was yet to come. He wanted nothing more than for this person to chase after Demon Lord Three Knights and Eunuch Li and kill them, but who knew that this person would play the game of not chasing after a cornered enemy, or perhaps he did not even bother to chase after them. His shining snow-blue eyes coldly stared at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was so frightened that he trembled. "Wen Lanfeng, what do you want?" Chapter 1196. The other person's terrifying and ruthless eyes were colder than cold-blooded animals. Anyone who was glanced at would feel panic. The eyes didn't seem to know him at all. Yu Qianqiu was now quite doubtful whether this person was Wen Lanfeng. Not only was his appearance more strange, but his cultivation was also different from Wen Lanfeng's. But if it really was Wen Lanfeng, why did it seem as if he didn't recognize him? Could it be that he was suppressed by me in the past and now wants to take revenge? Yu Qianqiu was prepared to leave as soon as he noticed that something was wrong. Wen Lanfeng? There was a trace of doubt in the man's cold eyes. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, "Who am I? Do you know me? Why do you also call me Wen Lanfeng?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He didn't understand what the other person meant. While he was stunned, the Fire Soul mysterious weapon dragged him to avoid the fatal light at the bottom of the sea. After stopping, the more Yu Qianqiu thought about the other person's words, the more he felt something was wrong. The other person didn't know who he was? It's not convenient for me to talk here. Can you let me go to the island and talk slowly? Yu Qianqiu tried to ask. Seeing that the other person didn't object, he let the Fire Soul mysterious weapon take him to the island. That person looked at him with a longing gaze, filled with the desire to know. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and carefully sized him up again and again, scratching his chin. He couldn't figure out if this person really didn't know who he was or if he was just pretending. On second thought, with the other person's cultivation, if he wanted to deal with him, he didn't need to beat around the bush. So he boldly flew over slowly and carefully stood on the same tree with the man. After carefully identifying him face to face again, he found that it was indeed Wen Lanfeng. Listening to what you just said, did someone also call you Wen Lanfeng? Yu Qianqiu asked with some curiosity. The man waved to the valley on the side of the mountain and said, "He said I was Wen Lanfeng and I killed him. He said I had been possessed by the devil and said I was the sword demon. What does it mean to be possessed by the devil? Am I Wen Lanfeng or sword devil?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned again. He realized that his brain couldn't keep up with the other party's train of thought when talking to such a person. He looked in the direction of the other party's finger and only saw a small rocky valley. Perhaps it was more appropriate to describe it as a rocky valley, but he didn't see anyone else. "He can still speak after being killed by you? What the hell is this?" Yu Qianqiu scratched his head awkwardly and smiled. "Can I see who you're talking about?" As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared without a trace. He was already standing in the valley, nodding at him as if he was asking him to go over. Yu Qianqiu nodded and flew over with the Fire Soul Profound weapon. Looking at the direction of his finger, he saw a shallow cave on the stone mountain wall. At a glance he could see the bottom of the cave. There was a body that had been dried into a human body sitting cross-legged with its head down. Although Yu Qianqiu didn't see the person's face clearly, he was shocked when he saw that there was only one arm. He quickly flashed into the cave. He walked to the corpse and squatted down with a dignified expression. There was a big penetrating wound in the abdomen of the dried corpse. He bent down to look at the face of the corpse. Although the face was dried, he could vaguely recognize who it was. As he expected, it was Li Duxing who had left for a long time. Yu Qianqiu stood up silently and slowly turned to walk out of the cave. Looking at Wen Lanfeng standing on the rock in front of him, he sighed softly. Now he could confirm that the terrifying master in front of him was Wen Lanfeng, and he had roughly guessed something. From Wen Lanfeng's words he could tell that Li Duxing was killed by Wen Lanfeng. The reason why Li Duxing was killed by Wen Lanfeng was that Wen Lanfeng had lost his memory due to Qigong deviation, which was the sword devil that Li Duxing mentioned before his death. As a result, Wen Lanfeng, who had lost his memory, was confused about whether his name was Wen Lanfeng or sword devil. Yu Qianqiu didn't expect that the two people who had left would have such a thing. One was killed by the other, and the other lost his memory due to Qigong deviation and became a terrifying master. Yu Qianqiu had no idea what had happened between the two of them for them to end up here. He wanted to ask Wen Lanfeng the reason, but he knew that given Wen Lanfeng's current state, he would not be able to get any answers. "Am I Wen Lanfeng or sword devil?" Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair fluttered in the wind as he stood motionlessly on the rock. He seemed to want to know who he was. Yu Qianqiu looked back at Li Duxing, who had been dead for a long time in the cave. When he looked at Wen Lanfeng again, he didn't have the slightest fear. At this time, no matter how high Wen Lanfeng's cultivation was, he was just a poor man who lost his memory in Yu Qianqiu's eyes. He smiled faintly and said, "Your name is Wen Lanfeng. Sword Devil is your nickname." The light blue cloud pattern between Wen Lanfeng's eyebrows loosened, and he showed a look of sudden realization. He nodded and said, "So my name is Wen Lanfeng, and Sword Devil is my nickname. Damn it. Such a master became a fool." Yu Qianqiu felt that it was not worth it, but his eyes gradually brightened. Wasn't this the trump card to deal with San Yi and the others? He flashed to the front of Wen Lanfeng and said seriously, "I'm your friend Yu Qianqiu, do you remember me?" "Yu Qianqiu?" Wen Lanfeng's blue eyes were no longer cold but full of blankness. He shook his head and said, "I don't know you." Yu Qianqiu was embarrassed and waved his hand, "It doesn't matter. I'll take you home. When you go back you will remember me." He was determined to take Wen Lanfeng back to deal with San Yi and the others. "Home?" Wen Lanfeng's eyes were still blank. He looked around and said, "This is my home. I'm very familiar with it. You don't need to take me home." Yu Qianqiu was speechless. Although Wen Lanfeng was an idiot, it was really difficult to fool him. After a while he coughed solemnly and said, "Wen Lanfeng, have you even forgotten Lu Yanqing?" Wen Lanfeng was immediately stunned by these words. His eyes flashed with an extremely chaotic look and he suddenly murmured, "Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing." Sure enough, he was still the idiot. He didn't remember anyone, but he still remembered that Lu Yanqing. Yu Qianqiu saw that it was useful to bring out Lu Yanqing. He was secretly happy and continued to provoke, "Yes. It's Lu Yanqing. Have you forgotten her? The place with Lu Yanqing is your real home." "Lu Yanqing. My real home. Lu Yanqing." Wen Lanfeng was still muttering to herself, but what made Yu Qianqiu stunned was that Wen Lanfeng had actually cried silently. Drops of crystal-clear light blue tears gently slid down from her eyes, quietly slipping down. Yu Qianqiu suddenly felt a little embarrassed to continue to provoke him. When Lan Feng noticed that he was crying, he raised his hand and stretched out 2 fingers to catch a drop of light blue tears. Under the refraction of the sun, the tears shone with a magnificent blue light. He asked, "What is this? Why are my eyes watering uncontrollably?" Yu Qianqiu was speechless. When Lan Feng continued to ask, "Why does my calm heart suddenly have a very sad feeling? Why does the name Lu Yanqing make me feel so warm? Why does this name make my heart unable to calm down again? I seem to be very familiar with this person, don't I?" As he spoke, the light blue tears in his eyes continued to fall quietly. Yu Qianqiu nodded and stared at him with a wry smile. "Do you want to see her? Lu Yanqing, my real home." When Lan Feng suddenly nodded vigorously and said, "I want to see her very much. Please take me to see her. I want to go back to my real home." Then let's go home. Let's go home." Yu Qianqiu smiled helplessly and casually scattered a few small silver balls into the valley. Then the two disappeared together. The two who fled to the periphery of the Blue Sea Deathtrap saw that the terrifying expert did not chase after them. They looked at each other and immediately stopped. Demon Lord Three Knights frowned and said, "When did the 3 realms have such a powerful expert?" Eunuch calmed his lingering fear. After thinking for a long time, he said in a low voice, "He is indeed very powerful. If this subordinate guessed correctly, for such a powerful expert to appear in this place, he must have been tempered by the Blue Sea essence. Even his eyes and hair have turned blue. This is clearly a sign of borrowing too much Blue Sea essence. I remember that when Lord Demon God lost his mind, his eyes were blue for a period of time, but it was not as deep as this one. I thought so too, but if it really is a sign of using too much Blue Sea essence, it is clearly to the extent that it has penetrated into the bone marrow. I have endured the pain of the Blue Sea essence tempering my body. I cannot imagine that a human's will can withstand the corrosion of such a huge amount of energy without being refined. If that is the case, he would have long become one with the Blue Sea essence. How could he still be alive?" Demon Lord Three Knights said in shock. Eunuch nodded in agreement, then shook his head in denial. "Demon Lord, do you still remember his answer when you asked him? You asked him who he was, and he said that this question made him very uncomfortable. I felt that from his tone, it seemed like he did not know who he was, as if he had already gone mad and lost his mind, becoming a real demon. A demon who had gone mad was a completely different concept from those who followed the demonic path. The former was more accurately described as sick, while the latter cultivated demonic arts and did not share the same path as others. Gone mad? Demon Lord Three Knights thought for a moment, then sucked in a breath of cold air. That seems to be the case, but I really cannot imagine that someone could use too much Blue Sea essence and still survive. Just how strong of a will would that require? I'm afraid that even Lord Demon God could not withstand such a huge amount of Blue Sea essence, right? Heavens! Just what kind of faith would allow a person to persevere like this? It's simply inconceivable. Chapter 1197. In my opinion, this is a good thing, Eunuch said thoughtfully. Demon King Three Knights was puzzled. What do you mean? Since he's lost his mind, as long as we speak carefully and follow his temper, there shouldn't be any big problems. This means that we don't have to run anymore. We can try to get in touch with him. Who knows, there might be unexpected gains. Maybe we can recruit him to serve the Demon King, Eunuch said. Demon King Three Knights thought for a moment, then waved his hand without hesitation. Let's go back. The two carefully turned back the way they came. In Utopia, when Lan Feng, who had been teleported here, stood in front of Ethereal Palace and looked around in confusion. He had no impression of this place at all. Yu Qianqiu asked him to wait, so he stood there and waited. Not long after, a large group of people came out of Ethereal Palace. Everyone who knew when Lan Feng was stunned by his strange appearance. Lu Yanqing, who was walking quickly in front, also stopped and asked Yu Qianqiu suspiciously, "Is he really Wen Lan Feng?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. "Yes, it's him. Just like I said, there's something wrong with him here." He raised his hand and pointed to his head. After Wen Lanfeng's gaze swept across the crowd, he directly fixed on Lu Yanqing. He teleported in front of Lu Yanqing. His eyes shone with a snow-blue light as he said, "I remember you." He couldn't help but reach out to touch Lu Yanqing's face. "Damn it. Selective amnesia. I remember what I don't want to forget," Yu Qianqiu muttered. Lu Yanqing subconsciously wanted to raise her hand to block his, but after a pause she let his hand fall on her face and gently caress it. Suddenly, everyone noticed that Wen Lanfeng's eyes were inexplicably glistening with light blue tears. Those who knew about the relationship between the two could only shake their heads slightly, while those who didn't know looked at each other in dismay. Lu Yanqing gently grabbed his hand and took the opportunity to examine his body. After a while, tears also appeared in her eyes. She bit her lip and choked with a trembling voice, "How did you become like this?" She stretched out her hand to wipe away the blue tears on Wen Lanfeng's face. However, as soon as his hand touched the light blue tears, it immediately released a dazzling blue light that wrapped around Lu Yanqing. Lu Yanqing's entire body trembled on the spot, and her entire body trembled uncontrollably. The expression on her face was extremely painful, as if she was enduring some kind of torture. How could this be? Everyone was shocked, and Wen Lanfeng also seemed a little surprised. Then he seemed to realize something and reached out to touch Lu Yanqing's forehead. All the blue light converged into Wen Lanfeng's fingertips, and Lu Yanqing slowly recovered from the torment. Wei Chuanqiu suddenly tugged at Yu Qianqiu's clothes and whispered, "You found him in the Blue Sea Deadland." Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yes, is there a problem?" Wei Chuanqiu coughed slightly and said, "His tears may contain Blue Sea essence. You can find a way to make him shed more and then collect it." Yu Qianqiu looked at Wen Lanfeng with some amazement. He didn't know whether Wei Chuanqiu's guess was true or not. If it was true and even tears contained Blue Sea essence, then Wen Lanfeng's body contained a lot of Blue Sea essence? "How did you become like this?" Lu Yanqing couldn't bear it anymore. She hugged Wen Lanfeng's cheeks and burst into tears. "Seeing you, I really feel like I'm back home." Wen Lanfeng raised his hand and stroked Lu Yanqing's hair. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "You didn't lie to me." "Of course. Why would I lie to you?" Yu Qianqiu nodded and smiled awkwardly. He then waved his hand at everyone and said, "Everyone disperse. Let them talk in private. We won't disturb them." Everyone had no objections and left. Yu Qianqiu pulled Wei Chuanqiu to the edge of the cliff outside the Misty Palace. Hong Tailong saw that the two were sneaking around and didn't want to be left behind. He heard Yu Qianqiu ask, "Are you sure his tears contain Blue Sea essence?" "I haven't seen it, but you found him in the Blue Sea Deadland. Looking at the phenomenon just now and the changes in his appearance, I think it's very likely." Wei Chuanqiu expressed her doubts. "If it's true, then it's troublesome." Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. "Isn't that a good thing? What trouble?" Wei Chuanqiu was puzzled. "What's good about it?" Yu Qianqiu snapped, "Why don't you think about it? If the Blue Sea essence can make people like this, do you think I would dare to let Bai Sujin take that risk? If she becomes like Wen Lanfeng, who do you want me to reason with?" This. Wei Chuanqiu's expression turned solemn. The Myriad Demon Heart Sutra really didn't have any records about the side effects of the Blue Sea essence. Hong Tailong coughed and interrupted, "Seeing this one, whatever, the Blue Sea essence you guys are talking about reminds me of a legend I've heard in the Dragon Clan." "What legend?" The two turned around and asked in unison. Hong Tailong, who had finally turned the topic to him, chuckled and said, "It's said that the Coiling Dragon Patriarch heard it from Tao. It said that there's a very mystical thing in the universe called the Indigo Heart. It contains a tremendous amount of energy and is a mystical treasure that can test the loyalty of love. It said that if a man and a woman in love can withstand the test of the Indigo Heart, they will receive the blessings of the Indigo Heart and receive unimaginable benefits." Wei Chuanqiu was stunned at first, but then he smiled and said nothing. Obviously he didn't believe it. Yu Qianqiu also spat, "Ridiculous. Bullsh*t legend. It's a legend. I can't guarantee whether it's true or not." Hong Tailong chuckled and then asked curiously, "Did this Wen Lanfeng really scare away San Yi and that guy in mourning?" Yu Qianqiu didn't answer. Instead he shushed them. The two turned around and saw Lu Yanqing walking towards them with tears still wet. Yu Qianqiu quickly walked over and asked with concern, "You're proficient in medicine. How's Wen Lanfeng's condition? Can he still be cured?" "Yes," Lu Yanqing said with a sad expression. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. He clapped his hands and praised, as expected of a divine doctor, "Even amnesia can be cured. If Wen Lanfeng returns to normal, then it's just around the corner for us to avenge the millions of cultivators in the human world." Hong Tailong and Wei Chuanqiu also nodded excitedly. "Say it. What do you need to cure Wen Lanfeng? As long as it's within my means, I'll find a way to get it for you." Yu Qianqiu rubbed his palms together. Lu Yanqing shook her head sadly. "Nothing is needed. It's very easy to cure his amnesia. The three looked at each other and asked in unison, "What do you mean?" Lu Yanqing's lips trembled a few times before she said in a low voice, "He hasn't lost his memory. He preserved it with great perseverance, but it's suppressed by the powerful energy in his body. If he wants to recover his memory, he must release all the energy in his body, but that energy has already fused with his cultivation. If he releases that energy, his cultivation will completely dissipate." The three were dumbfounded when they heard this. Everyone wanted a Wenlan Feng with profound cultivation. How could Wenlan Feng deal with Demon Monarch 3 Knights and the others if he lost his cultivation? Not to mention that it was simply cruel to the extreme for a cultivator to completely disperse his cultivation that he'd bitterly cultivated for many years. If Wenlan Feng was awake, he might not agree as well. So, should he heal him or not? In fact, there was something Lu Yanqing didn't say. The reason Wenlan Feng was able to resist the erosion of such a huge energy with his tenacious will was entirely because he had a strong belief that supported him. It was simple to know what this belief was. It was what he remembered after losing his memory. It was his only spiritual pillar. After Lu Yanqing came into contact with it, she found that Wenlan Feng had forgotten everything. The only thing he remembered was Lu Yanqing. In other words, the reason why Wenlan Feng could persevere was because of Lu Yanqing. This cruel to the extreme test almost melted Lu Yanqing's heart. She finally understood how deep Wenlan Feng loved her. Even at the last moment of mental collapse, she would live strong for her. She would never abandon or give up. She would never change to her. She would never give up. She would never give up. Lu Yanqing had just touched the huge energy, which was Wenlan Feng's tears. She found it difficult to bear, and the pain Wenlan Feng had endured could be imagined. Lu Yanqing's heart felt like it was being cut by a knife. Yu Qianqiu pondered for a long time and then slowly said, "Lu Yanqing, I believe that if you speak, even if Wenlan Feng is still in amnesia, he will listen to you and dissipate all his cultivation. But do you think Wenlan Feng can accept the fact that he has lost his cultivation when he wakes up? I don't know. But I don't want him to be hurt again in my life." Lu Yanqing's shoulders trembled as she cried. She knew that Wenlan Feng had been seriously injured by Changchun because of her. After 100 years of seclusion, he was seriously injured by Changchun again. The reason why Wenlan Feng became like this today was to improve his cultivation and restore his dignity in front of her. In short, everything was for her. She was worried that Wenlan Feng would not be able to accept the loss of his cultivation when he wakes up. "I understand your feelings," Yu Qianqiu said. "Lu Yanqing, do me a favor. I need Wenlan Feng's cultivation to help me take revenge. But now the only person who can make him willingly obey is you. I hope you can." Lu Yanqing shook her head and interrupted. She knew what he meant without saying anything else. She cried, "I can't take advantage of him when he is unconscious." The three of them looked at each other. If this woman did not agree, looking at Wenlan Feng's appearance and his cultivation, no one could control him. Chapter 1198. In the high-walled courtyard of Misty Palace, Yu Qianqiu stood in the middle with the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier and Wenlan Feng on his left and right. Lu Yanqing and the others looked at them. Lu Yanqing finally agreed to Yu Qianqiu. If Yu Qianqiu tried his best to force her, how could she be Yu Qianqiu's opponent? In the end, she had to agree even if she didn't agree. Thus, she persuaded Wenlan Feng to follow Yu Qianqiu. However, she agreed to Yu Qianqiu's condition that she would only do this once and not again. But for Yu Qianqiu, it was enough to bring Wenlan Feng out once. He would kill whoever he could and settle everything before coming back. Lu Yanqing reluctantly stared at Wenlan Feng as she walked over. She wanted to say something, but Yu Qianqiu was afraid that she would continue to be naggy, so he waved his hand and disappeared. The three of them appeared outside Illusory Immortal City. They ran to the ruins of Illusory Immortal City, but they couldn't see a single person. They didn't know where Demon King 3 Knights had moved their headquarters to. But it wasn't difficult to find. The three of them casually circled around outside and caught a few Demonic Path soldiers to verify. Only then did they find out that the Demonic Path Army's headquarters was temporarily at Myriad Saint Mountain. On the misty mountain behind Myriad Saint Mountain, Wanling stood in front of the cliff outside the manor every day, waiting for Bai Qi's return. Unfortunately, there was no news of him. No one knew what she was thinking. She didn't even know that Yu Qianqiu had brought Wenlan Feng and the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier behind her. It was only when the white deer beside her was frightened by the terrifying Fire Soul Mystic Soldier that she suddenly turned around. "Yu Qianqiu, how did you get in?" Wanling exclaimed. She quickly looked around as if she wanted to call the police. "Bai Qi is in my hands. Yu Qianzhou's words immediately made Wan Ling give up on the idea of calling the police. She shouted in panic, "You're talking nonsense." Yu Qianzhou stared at this infatuated woman with an indifferent expression. He found that Wan Ling was less cunning and sharpness compared to before. She had more calmness and tranquility of a married woman. Her charm was even better than before. It could be seen that she had someone to rely on and had calmed down. Yu Qianzhou sighed slightly in his heart, but there was no change on his face, nor did he argue with Wan Ling. He flipped his hand in his sleeve and took out the obsidian underworld light mirror and shook it in front of her. Wan Ling immediately recognized that it was Bai Qi's item. She turned pale with fright and asked, "What did you do to him?" "What I will do to him depends on the truth of your answer to my question." Yu Qianzhou put away the obsidian underworld light mirror and said indifferently, "If there is a lie, I promise you will never see him again in this life." Wan Ling completely panicked when she heard this. She completely ignored the strange Wenlan Feng and the Fire Soul Profound Weapon and said helplessly, "What do you want to know?" "As long as I know, I will not hide anything." "That's good." Yu Qianzhou looked at the surrounding mountains and said indifferently, "I want to know where the important figures of the evil Tao are staying in Myriad Saint Mountain. I only know that Demon King 3 Nights has occupied Grandfather's Myriad Saint Palace. As for the situation of the others, I have never left this place. I really don't know anything." Wan Ling was almost begging, "Yu Qianzhou, I beg you to let Bai Qi go, okay? That's really all I know." "I believe what you said." Yu Qianzhou's gaze shot to the highest peak in the distance and said indifferently, "You really want to see Bai Qi?" Wan Ling was also a smart person. She was just confused because she was concerned. Hearing this, she immediately sensed something was wrong and said with a trembling voice, "What did you do to him?" As soon as she finished speaking, the Fire Soul Profound Weapon beside Yu Qianzhou flashed and the colorful flame blurred her eyes. Looking at Wan Ling, who was instantly killed by the Fire Soul Profound Weapon and turned into ashes, Yu Qianzhou said with a sad expression, "Bai Qi wants to give you a hope to live, but I feel that it is too cruel to you. It is better to end this ill-fated relationship. Go." With a light shout, the three of them directly broke through the defensive formation and flew towards the Myriad Saints' palace. Just as they neared the Myriad Saints' palace, countless wooden tendrils suddenly shot out from the Myriad Saints' palace, covering the sky as they tried to stop the three of them. The Fire Soul Profound Weapon immediately rushed towards the countless wooden roots, and the wooden roots that touched it instantly turned into ashes. The woman screamed and the countless wooden roots retracted. The Clear Sky Great Demon King, who was temporarily guarding this place, rushed out of Myriad Saint Palace. When she saw the enemies, she immediately exclaimed, "It's you guys again." Without saying a word, she turned around and wanted to run, but with her cultivation, how could she outrun the Fire Soul Profound Weapon? The Fire Soul Profound Weapon chased after her and was about to kill her with a palm strike. Yu Qianzhou, who had killed his way into Myriad Saint Palace under the escort of Wenlan Feng, did not notice the Demon King 3 Nights' movements and immediately shouted, "Capture her alive." The Fire Soul Profound Weapon, which was connected to his mind, directly slapped the Clear Sky Great Demon King's back, and a Samadhi true fire poured into her body. Fire was her natural nemesis, let alone the Samadhi true fire. The Clear Sky Great Demon King wilted on the spot and was directly captured by the Fire Soul Profound Weapon. It grabbed her neck and stood on the roof of the palace. At this moment, the commotion had already alarmed the heroes of the demonic path, and they instantly rushed over from all directions, surrounding Myriad Saint Mountain. Many people still remembered the scene of the Fire Soul Profound Weapon wreaking havoc in the illusory immortal city. When they saw it, they were all shocked and they were all looking forward to the appearance of the Demon King 3 Nights and Eunuch Li. However, they did not see the two of them appear to defend against the enemy, and they immediately wanted to retreat. However, they did not know if the two of them were really not here, so no one dared to act rashly, and no one dared to escape rashly. Yu Qianzhou and Wenlan Feng searched around Myriad Saint Palace and killed some demonic path soldiers, but they did not see the figures of the Demon King 3 Nights and Eunuch Li. Damn it! Are they not back yet? With their cultivation they should have returned long ago. Yu Qianzhou looked at the cold and empty Myriad Saint Palace and felt suspicious. In the end, he was still not at ease, so he knelt on one knee and pressed his palm on the ground. He used both the earth and metal arts, and very soon he found a dungeon, and it seemed that there was someone locked up. Yu Qianzhou was a little curious. He did not know who was locked up, but he definitely had to save the enemy of his enemy. The two of them immediately rushed into the courtyard of the harem and blasted open the fake mountain in the middle of the courtyard. The entrance to the dungeon appeared in front of the two of them and they flashed in. In the pitch-black dungeon, there was an iron cell as thick as a child's arm, and on the cold iron floor, a woman was lying, looking abnormally lonely and miserable. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully, and his brows immediately furrowed. This woman was none other than the Mu Tianjiao that he knew. He did not expect that woman who was not inferior to men to actually fall to such a state. She did not even react when he blasted open the dungeon, and it was obvious that she had been restrained. He took out a divine sword and with a ka, he directly split open the door of the iron cell. He walked over and knelt on one knee, gently supporting the motionless Mu Tianjiao against his body. Mu Tianjiao's blank and helpless eyes fell on his face, and her unfocused gaze gradually focused. When she saw that it was Yu Qianqiu, although she could not move, her eyes began to fill with large teardrops. She did not think that she could live, and she did not think that someone would come to save her, because she knew that Wu Xiong and his son would not give up for her. In fact, her heart was already dead and life and death were no longer important to her. However, not even in her dreams did she think that at this kind of time, in this kind of place, someone would actually come to save her, and it was Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu quickly removed the restriction on her body, and seeing that she was biting her lips to prevent herself from crying, he could not help but sigh, "Mu Tianjiao, why are you here? Could it be that Wu Xiong did not escape with you to the Netherworld God Palace?" Hearing that voice that she had not heard for a long time, Mu Tianjiao finally could not help but cry bitterly. She swung her fists and fiercely punched him, then suddenly hugged his neck and buried her head in his shoulder, sobbing uncontrollably, "Why is it you? Why is it you who came to save me? Why did you reject me back then?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and really did not know what to say. He then gently patted her back and said, "I am about to fight to the death with Demon King 3 knights and the others. It is very dangerous for you to stay here, so I will first send you to a safe place." Unexpectedly, Mu Tianjiao hugged his neck even tighter and rubbed his shoulder with all her strength, shaking her head and choking, "Don't abandon me, hold me, I want to see the outside world in your arms, I won't affect you, just this once, okay?" Yu Qianqiu's expression twitched, but in the end, he still gritted his teeth and hugged her by the waist. He quickly drilled out of the iron cage and quickly left the dungeon with Wenlanfeng. Seeing that the Fire Soul Profound soldiers holding the Demon King Qing Tian on the roof did not move, the two also flashed to the roof. Yu Qianqiu looked around and his gaze directly locked onto Jin Tai in the crowd. He immediately laughed coldly and said, "Jin Tai, we meet again, you really made me look for you. Today it's time for our new and old grudges to be settled." In the air, Jin Tai looked at his colleagues on both sides and did not want to lose his prestige. He immediately shouted angrily, "Yu Qianqiu, how dare you make an enemy of the Demon King? Your death is not far away and you still dare to talk big." "But Yu Qianqiu suddenly shouted and quickly observed the expressions of the crowd, because he still did not know who the great Demon King Hudu was. In the crowd, the great Demon King Hudu did not understand, and pointed at Yu Qianqiu and scolded, "Cowardly bandit, taking advantage of the Demon King's absence to cause trouble. Wait until the Demon King returns, let's see how arrogant you can be." Haha. Yu Qianqiu looked up to the sky and laughed wildly, "I have fought with San Yi several times and I am still alive and well. What can he do to me? This time I am looking for him." These words immediately caused the surrounding people to scold, but no one dared to make a move. Mu Tianjiao, who was in his arms, hugged his neck, and personally witnessed the scene of him laughing arrogantly at the heroes of the demonic path. A gratified smile appeared on her face and she said in a low voice, "Being in your arms is indeed the safest, I have always thought so. Yu Qianqiu, promise me after I die, please bury me beside my mother." Hearing her voice gradually weaken, Yu Qianqiu was slightly stunned. He looked down and saw blood flowing out of Mu Tianjiao's lips. He was shocked and quickly checked, and immediately found that Mu Tianjiao had cut off all her meridians. He immediately cried out in alarm, "Mu Tianjiao, what are you doing?" Chapter 1199. "I know, you killed my father, but I can't hate you. I'm a married woman, but now I'm hugging my father's murderer in front of everyone. I have no face to live, you shouldn't have refused. I want you to never forget me, to take revenge on you." Mu Tianjiao's intermittent and weak voice stopped, and her arms around his neck softened. Her eyes closed, but there was still a satisfied smile on her face. Her red lips were dyed bright and dazzling with fresh blood. "Why are you so stupid? Don't we want to live well by fighting and killing? As long as people are alive, everything can be solved. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and shook his head slowly. Then he hugged Mu Qianjiao's body tightly in his arms and pressed his lips on Mu Qianjiao's blood-stained lips. This scene caused the demonic cultivators in the air to look at each other in dismay, not knowing what was going on. The domineering Great Demon King, who had personally captured Mu Qianjiao, crossed his arms and sneered. This Wu Xiong's wife is a bit interesting. I wonder what Wu Xiong will think if he finds out about this. His wife actually made him a cuckold in public. Yu Qianqiu, the Wu father and son have suffered such a great humiliation. I don't think they will let you off. Amidst the laughter, Yu Qianqiu's lips released the kiss of life and death. Looking at Mu Qianjiao's lost face, he smiled faintly and said, "It turns out that not being fickle and being a sanctimonious person is also a mistake. In fact, how can I not like beauties? In fact, you've always been in my heart. If I had known earlier, I would have slept with you. I only know today that I've always been a coward." As soon as he said this, the surrounding laughter suddenly became louder, but it seemed that they were laughing with a guilty conscience. Fire Soul Mysterious Soldier and Wen Lanfeng did not know what everyone was laughing about, nor did they know what Yu Qianqiu meant. After Mu Qianjiao's corpse was hugged tightly again, it disappeared into Yu Qianqiu's arms in front of everyone's eyes and was sent to Utopia. The smile on Yu Qianqiu's face suddenly disappeared. He waved his hand and pointed at Jintai and Hudu, "Catch them alive and kill the others. Kill, kill." Wen Lanfeng's long blue hair fluttered in the wind, and his whole body shone with a snow-blue radiance. In an instant he shot into the crowd, and the snow-blue sword shadows danced around him. He was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, and no one could block his attack. Rumble. His target was obviously Hutu and Jintai. No one had expected that such a god of killing would suddenly appear. Immediately they didn't care about anything else. It was more important to run for their lives. Hutu and Jintai fled in panic. However, how could they escape from Wen Lanfeng? Wen Lanfeng grabbed Hutu with one hand and caught up with Jintai in the blink of an eye. He killed a lot of people with one in each hand, and then flashed back as if nothing had happened. Jintai and Hutu, whose cultivations were sealed, stared at Yu Qianqiu with ashen faces. Yu Qianqiu didn't even glance at them. Instead, he glanced around at the crowd of Devil League warriors who had just dispersed. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he suddenly turned around and slapped Jintai's face over 100 times, scolding, "Let me sing a song. Let me dance." After slapping for a while, he eased the grief and indignation that had accumulated because of Mu Qianjiao's death. Jintai did not know that he was looking for an excuse to vent his anger. After being slapped, he still defended with fear, "Yu Qianqiu, this is all a misunderstanding. I was instigated by that bitch Ji Wu." Misunderstanding my ass. Is it also a misunderstanding to want to kill me in front of me? Yu Qianqiu opened his palm and slapped Wen Lanfeng again. Hutu, who was also being held by Wen Lanfeng, was terrified. He didn't know if he would end up like Wen Lanfeng. After being slapped again, Jintai said with a terrified face, "Yu Qianqiu, as long as you spare my life, I'm willing to serve you. If you don't believe me, I can give you my natal primordial spirit." It could be said that he was unscrupulous in order to survive. Hudu Great Demon King and Azure Sky Great Demon King had terrible expressions. Their natal primordial spirits were in the hands of Demon King 3 Knights, so they couldn't offer their loyalty even if they wanted to. Yu Qianqiu did not buy it. He glanced at the three and asked, "Where is he?" "I don't know." Jintai and Hutu answered hurriedly, but they all looked at Qing Tian. Yu Qianqiu raised his eyebrows. He pulled the two of them from Wen Lanfeng's hands and sent them back to Utopia to be watched by Hong Tailong. Hong Tailong of Utopia's Misty Palace walked around the courtyard with his hands behind his back. He had just taken over Mu Qianjiao's corpse and was cursing his bad luck. He did not expect Yu Qianqiu to send him Jintai and Hutu in the blink of an eye. When he saw Jintai, Hong Tailong's eyes lit up. He laughed wildly and said, "Yu Qianqiu, you're too awesome." His voice immediately attracted a lot of people to watch. It was unknown where Jin Taijing was. The moment he saw Hong Tailong, he immediately panicked and ran. However, with his cultivation sealed, how could he possibly escape? Hong Tailong chased after him and gave him a series of punches and kicks. As he did so, he cursed, "Bastard! You deserve this." Hudu stood motionless. He knew he could not run, so he just stood there and accepted his fate. Heir Shuejuan and Ji Wu, who came out of the palace, did not expect Jintai to be caught. Heir Shuejuan shouted, "Jintai, you bastard! He immediately rushed over and joined in the beating. The two big guys started punching and kicking. Jin Tai desperately crawled to Ji Wu's feet and shouted, "Madam, save me." Ji Wu, who was originally indifferent, suddenly became angry out of humiliation. She shouted, "Who is your madam?" She kicked his head several times. Would have felt a chill. She did not know how many people Jin Tai had offended in the celestial realm. After venting his anger, Hong Tai-long saw that Jin Tai would die if he continued to beat him. He quickly stopped the two of them and said, "Stop, stop. You can't kill him. He's still useful to you, Qianqiu." Jin Tai, who was beaten black and blue, quickly got up and hid behind Hong Tai-long. He could not see the majesty of the celestial emperor anymore. On the roof of Wansheng Palace, Yu Qianqiu grabbed Demon King Qing Tian's hair and pulled him from the hands of the Fire Soul Mystic Soldier. He said indifferently, "Where is San Yi?" "I really don't know. Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li carried the fainted Yan Zhuoxing away and have not returned. He asked me to temporarily stay in Wansheng Palace, but he really did not tell me where to go." The great Demon King of Qing Tian complained as he pulled open his clothes. His green clothes slid down, exposing his beautiful body to the air. He grabbed Yu Qianqiu's hand and said seductively, "I've served the demon gods and the previous demon monarchs, and I've never disappointed them. As long as you let me live, I'm willing to serve you for the rest of my life. I'll definitely be ****. Yu Qianqiu punched her in the eye. He was not in the mood to play with her now. Demon King Qing Tian screamed and was thrown back to Utopia. The people from Misty Palace suddenly saw a naked woman and looked at each other. They did not know what Yu Qianqiu was doing outside. Yu Qianqiu, who wanted to search for San Yi, suddenly exclaimed, "Oh no! Are they still looking for Blue Sea Essence in the Blue Sea Death Trap?" He did not want another Wenlan Feng or a second demon god to pop out of the demonic path. Just as he was about to rush back to Blue Sea Death Trap, he suddenly saw 3 streams of light leading a group of streams of light rushing over. When he focused his eyes, Demon King San Yi, Eunuch Li, and Yan Zhuoxing were already standing in the sky. The scattered demonic path heroes had also returned. At this moment, Yan Zhuoxing's eyes were shining with alternating red and blue light, as if he was fighting something in his heart. He looked at Yu Qianqiu as if he did not see it. "Good. Very good. They're all here. This saves me the trouble of looking for them one by one." Yu Qianqiu looked at Yan Zhuoxing and chuckled. When Yan Zhuoxing heard his voice, his body trembled slightly, and the alternating red and blue light in his eyes flickered even faster. Demon King San Yi completely ignored Yu Qianqiu and cupped his hands at Wenlan Feng, whose blue hair was fluttering in the wind. "You are a wise man. Do not listen to the slanderous words of a lowly man and be used by him. I, Demon King San Yi, am willing to become allies with you. After my demonic path unifies the 3 realms, I am willing to share the world with you. What do you think?" Wenlan Feng's snow-blue eyes were calm. This was the first time the demonic path heroes heard Demon King San Yi admit defeat like this. For a moment they could not help but feel surprised. Could it be that Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li were not this person's match? They only guessed one thing, but they did not know that the reason why Demon King San Yi was so polite to Wenlan Feng was because he knew that Wenlan Feng had lost his mind and wanted to win him over to his side. Otherwise he would not have dared to bring everyone back here, knowing that a terrifying expert from the Blue Ocean Death Trap was here. Yu Qianqiu roughly guessed it and laughed. "San Yi, I'm afraid your plan is going to fail." He pointed at the 3 of them and said angrily, "Wenlan Feng, kill the 3 of them." At this moment, Yan Zhuoxing, who heard Yu Qianqiu's voice again, suddenly raised his arms and shouted at the sky. "Yu Qianqiu, I'm going to kill you." His voice reverberated in the sky. Almost at the same time, the red light in his red and blue eyes completely overshadowed the blue light. He stared at Yu Qianqiu like a sharp blade. At this moment, Yan Zhuoxing had successfully found the blue ocean essence to cleanse his meridians. His cultivation had directly crossed the Demon General level to the Demon King level, soaring to the late-stage Great Demon King level. He was only 1 step away from the God level. He did not expect to see Yu Qianqiu in front of him the moment he woke up. The humiliation of his mother and sister's death immediately surged in his mind. He desperately pounced at Yu Qianqiu, wishing he could tear Yu Qianqiu alive. Wenlan Feng, who was emitting snow-blue light, had just rushed out, and the 2 immediately met. Demon King San Yi and Eunuch Li exclaimed in unison, "Yan Zhuoxing is back." They knew how powerful Wenlan Feng was, and they also knew that Yan Zhuoxing was not Wenlan Feng's match at all. Chapter 1200. They thought they could persuade Wen Lanfeng, but they didn't know the story behind Wen Lanfeng. They didn't know Lu Yanqing's great influence on Wen Lanfeng, and they didn't expect this to happen. Otherwise they wouldn't have been sent here. Seeing Wen Lanfeng charging at him, a black full moon suddenly appeared in front of Yan Juexing. As his cultivation rose, so did the power of the devil blade. The black and red baleful aura intertwined like endless ghosts, and the devil blade's edge was like a soul-stirring cold thunderbolt streaking across the sky. Even the onlookers were shocked. A snow-blue sword light shot out to meet the black full moon above his head. Boom! The blue light exploded and dispersed, and the devil blade was sent flying into the sky, turning into a small black dot. Wen Lanfeng's eyes flashed with blue light. He didn't expect a late-stage immortal emperor to be able to block his attack. He waved his hand and another sword light shot out. The small black dot in the distance suddenly grew bigger, and the full moon returned with the momentum of thunder, blocking the blow again in an instant, using the curved tip of the wheel to defuse the blow. With the huge impact force, it turned into a ferocious and rapid spinning wheel. Instead, it slashed at Wen Lanfeng in the air, bringing with it a strong gust of wind that exploded. Yu Qianqiu was secretly shocked. He didn't expect Yan Juexing to become so powerful. Demon King Three Knights and Eunuch Li were both surprised and happy. They were happy that Lord Demon God's Devil Blade was indeed extraordinary, but they were shocked that Yan Juexing would be in danger if he continued fighting. Sky Devil Fist. Demon King Three Knights raised a monstrous demonic aura and waved his arm. A huge fist shadow the size of a mountain blasted at Wen Lanfeng. Demon Restriction Wheel. Eunuch Li slapped his palm, and a dozen shining white halos shot at Wen Lanfeng. In order to save Yan Juexing, the three of them attacked together with Yan Juexing's Devil Blade. Wen Lanfeng sensed danger. His eyes emitted a blue light. He swung his long snow-blue hair, and a jagged, dazzling snow-blue light burst out from his body. He was like a blue sun that shone brightly. Boom, boom, boom. With three loud explosions, the powerful shockwaves instantly destroyed all the peaks and valleys of the Myriad Saints Mountain. Countless disciples of the Myriad Saints Palace were annihilated amidst their screams, and the demonic cultivators scattered in all directions. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu had the protection of the Fire Soul Profound weapon beside him. Otherwise he would have to flee for his life as well. However, the Myriad Saints Palace beneath his feet had already been reduced to ashes in an instant. The Sky Devil Fist and the Forbidden Demon Wheel were smashed in an instant, and the Devil Blade was shaken away at the same time. Wen Lanfeng's white robe fluttered in the strong astral wind, and his snow-blue long hair fluttered in all directions. The blue light in his eyes shone brightly, and the blue cloud pattern between his eyebrows shone brightly, like a sword demon descending from heaven. As his body spun in the air, he waved his arms and shot out a dozen snow-blue sword shadows from his fingertips. Not good. The three of them exclaimed at the same time. However, a few sword shadows directly broke through Eunuch Li's defense and pierced through his chest at an unbelievable speed. Before he could use teleportation to dodge, a few pillars of blood spurted out from his chest. Eunuch Li clutched his chest in disbelief as blood began to flow from the corner of his mouth. Demonic succubus doppelganger. Demon King Three Knights raised his eyebrows and clapped his palms. His body immediately turned into dozens of phantom shadows and exploded. A few shocking sword shadows that were shooting over at high speed missed. At this moment, Yan Juexing had also awakened from his rage. He also used the demonic succubus doppelganger technique, but he couldn't keep up with Demon King Three Knights' speed. Just as the phantom shadows separated, he was pierced back to his original form by a few sword shadows. Fortunately, the Devil Blade returned in time to protect him, blocking the other few sword shadows for him. Boom! The Devil Blade let out a mournful cry, and Yan Juexing, who was behind the Devil Blade, fell to the ground with blood spurting out of his eye sockets. The Devil Blade that was shaken away shot back again and hooked onto Yan Juexing's clothes, trying to escape with him. Meanwhile, Eunuch Li clutched his chest and forced himself to flee. However, the two of them were too slow. Wen Lanfeng's fluttering blue long hair made a hissing sound in the air. In the blink of an eye, she caught up to Eunuch Li. She raised her arm, and a snow-blue light burst out from her palm, condensing into a huge sword shadow made of pure energy. She held it in her hand and swung it, cutting Eunuch Li into two. Blood splattered from the sky. Oh! In the distance, Demon King Three Knights let out a heaven-shaking mournful cry. Wen Lanfeng chased after Yan Juexing again. She slapped the side of the Devil Blade with her palm, sending it flying. Her other hand drew out a cold light and cut Yan Zhuisheng into two. After killing two in an instant, she turned into a stream of light with a swish of her blue hair and chased after Demon King Three Knights with her sword. Demon King Three Knights knew that he wasn't a match for this person, so he used the devil light glimpse to escape. The evil Dao heroes who were watching the battle from afar were also scared out of their wits as they fled for their lives. Great! Yu Qianzhou applauded excitedly. He didn't expect Wen Lanfeng to be so powerful. However, when he saw the fallen Yan Zhuisheng's body gush out a ball of black light, Yu Qianzhou turned pale with fright and shouted angrily, "Kill!" The Fire Soul Profound weapon immediately rushed over, wanting to exterminate Yan Zhuisheng completely. It chased after the ball of black light as if it was also very afraid of the true Samadhi fire. Boom! There was a loud sound in the air. Yu Qianzhou suddenly looked up and saw that the void had been torn open again. An incomparably terrifying aura seeped out to the vast land. That familiar giant devil claw once again stretched out from the sky and grabbed the Fire Soul Profound weapon, causing it to explode into the true Samadhi fire. A ball of devil chi gushed out from the devil claw to shake off the true Samadhi fire. She stretched out two fingers to summon the giant devil blade. With a light flick of the two fingers, the devil blade rumbled in the air like a thunderbolt, creating a black devil flame that chased after Wen Lanfeng like a black meteor. That imposing manner was truly earth-shattering. Wen Lanfeng suddenly turned back. Blue light shone brightly in his eyes. Blue light burst out from his whole body and quickly converged. His whole body instantly turned into a giant blue sword shadow and forcefully collided with the black meteor that was crashing towards the heaven and earth. Bang! The heaven and earth were shrouded in blue light and black light. Even the light of the sun was thousands of times inferior. The soil on the ground was monstrous and pushed away in all directions. Without protection, Yu Qianzhou directly hid back in Utopia to avoid the wind. After avoiding the wind, he appeared again. At this time, there was a huge pit with a radius of 100,000 miles under Yu Qianzhou's feet. The giant devil blade that stood tall was surrounded by a monstrous devil chi. It stood motionless on the ground, and there were many snow-blue stars around it. Wen Lanfeng was nowhere to be seen, and the giant devil claw that tore the void had disappeared. There was only a pair of dreamy and indifferent eyes looking down from the sky. Wen Lanfeng was dead? Yu Qianzhou looked at the snow-blue stars and suddenly trembled uncontrollably. He waved his arm and pointed at the indifferent eyes looking down from the sky and shouted angrily, "Devil God! I swear to kill you." The indifferent eyes looked at him for a while, faintly revealing some indifference and disdain, and gradually disappeared in the sky. The giant devil blade that stood tall between heaven and earth shrank in an instant and absorbed all the devil chi. With a swoosh, it flew into the distant sky and no one knew where it went. "Devil God! I swear to kill you." Yu Qianzhou pointed at the sky where the devil eye disappeared and shouted angrily again. As soon as the devil blade left, the countless snow-blue stars that had been stunned suddenly began to spin faster and faster. When they gathered together, a dazzling blue light erupted. After the light disappeared, Wen Lanfeng's figure fell heavily from the sky and fell to the ground, unconscious and motionless. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He didn't expect that a person that was turned into ashes could be reformed. He immediately turned into a stream of light and rushed over, holding Wen Lanfeng to check. Wen Lanfeng's face and body were covered with blue blood. He was in a deep coma, but his bodily functions were still intact. He was not dead yet. Yu Qianzhou was pleasantly surprised. He didn't expect that Wen Lanfeng could survive the devil god's attack. The blue sea essence was indeed magical. At this moment, streams of light rushed over from all directions. Yu Qianzhou's expression froze. He knew that Demon King Three Knights and the others had returned. Now that he had lost the Fire Soul Mystic weapon and Wen Lanfeng was seriously injured and unconscious, he couldn't stay here any longer. He immediately disappeared with Wen Lanfeng in his arms. Demon King Three Knights, who had rushed back, floated in the center of the huge crater. He looked around in shock. He saw the demonic claw that tore through the void. It was the demonic claw of the demonic god technique. He could recognize it at a glance. The demonic cultivators who rushed over also looked at the endless pit in shock. The domineering great demon king floated behind Demon King Three Knights and said with lingering fear, "It seems that Lord Devil God personally tore through the void and attacked. It was Lord Devil God who saved me." The excited demon Lord Three Knights nodded heavily. He raised his head to look at where the demon god had torn open the void, then suddenly knelt down on one knee in the void with great sincerity, prostrating himself in front of the demon god. The demonic cultivators also knelt down and bowed in the same direction. Utopia's misty palace. As soon as Yu Qianqiu walked into the palace with the unconscious Wen Lanfeng in his arms, everyone exclaimed and surrounded him. Lu Yanqing even opened her arms and snatched Wen Lanfeng from Yu Qianqiu's hands. Kneeling on the ground, she stroked Wen Lanfeng's messy blue hair with trembling hands and cried, "What happened to him? How did he get hurt like this? Didn't you say he would be fine with his cultivation?" Hong Tailong also gasped, pointing at the unconscious Wen Lanfeng and asking Yu Qianqiu, "What's going on?" With his cultivation, who else could injure him to this extent? Even in the god world he can be considered an expert. The muscles on Yu Qianqiu's face twitched fiercely and he said gloomily, "Who else but that shameless devil god?" The devil god tore through the void and attacked again. Devil god. The crowd exclaimed in unison. To them this was such an unreachable figure. The third time. It's the third time. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth and gestured to the crowd. This is the third time that guy has attacked me so brazenly. They say it's not the third time. That bastard devil god has gone too far. Chapter 12:01. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Yu Qianqiu suddenly grabbed Hong Tailong's clothes and said sternly, "Isn't it said that the experts of the divine realm are not allowed to attack the lower realms? Why does the demon god attack again and again without anyone stopping him?" Hong Tailong helplessly let go of his hand, shook his head and sighed. The other experts of the divine realm naturally don't dare to do so, but the demon god is the #1 expert of the divine realm. Who can do anything to him if he doesn't abide by the rules? Unless Dao personally takes action, no one in the divine realm dares to do anything to him. This is the capital of his arrogance. After saying that, he squatted beside Wen Lanfeng and carefully examined him. He then patted Wen Lanfeng's chest and said with relief, "Fortunately it's nothing serious. With his cultivation base he should recover very quickly. To be able to survive the demon god's attack is already a great fortune in misfortune. My fire soul mystic weapon has been destroyed by the demon god's attack." Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth, his heart filled with hatred. Once the demon god attacked, even the fire soul mystic weapon's chance of resurrection was cut off. He didn't know how the demon god did it. As long as he's fine. Hong Tailong stood up and gestured to everyone to carry Wen Lanfeng in. Bai Sujin and the other women immediately helped Lu Yanqing up and comforted her, while Wei Chuanqiu and the other men carried Wen Lanfeng into the room. At this time Hong Tailong turned around and patted Yu Qianqiu's shoulder, saying with a smile, "The fire soul mystic weapon can be refined again. Anyway, there are many experts in the divine mausoleum. The key is that you now have the metal spirit and earth spirit. After devouring them, not only will your cultivation base soar, you can also refine a large number of earth soul mystic weapons and gold soul mystic weapons. All in all, it's a big profit this time." As soon as these words came out, the haze on Yu Qianqiu's face immediately dispersed. Only then did he remember that Jintai and Hudu had been captured by him. He immediately sneered and said, "Damn it! I was almost confused by the demon god. How could I forget this? Where are the captured people?" "Locked up. By the way, that woman's body, they said it was the wife of Jintai's subordinate. What's going on?" Hong Tailong had a curious look on his face, as if he was trying to find some clues from Jiang Chen's face. He said enticingly, "If she is very important to you, why don't we buy her and bring her to the mausoleum of the god of sin? She might have a chance of resurrection there." Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. He pondered for a while and said slowly, "No need. She committed suicide. Before she died, she wanted me to bury her beside her mother. I should fulfill her wish. What's more, since he was dead, why bother with resurrecting after countless years? He might as well turn over a new leaf and start a new life, forgetting all the happiness and unhappiness of his previous life. Even if I can really be reborn, even if I die, I don't want to hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin and spend countless years in a daze. It's better to end everything once and for all." "You don't want to be reborn?" Hong Tailong was taken aback. He then chuckled strangely and said, "Is it because you robbed someone else's tomb in the mausoleum of the god of sin and are afraid of retribution if you hide in the mausoleum of the god of sin? So, this is called gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. You can think whatever you want." Yu Qianqiu let out a breath and said, "Where is she? I'm going to fulfill her last wish." Hong Tailong led him to the room where Mu Tianjiao's body was kept. Yu Qianqiu stared at her quietly for a while before extending his palm. A water dragon emerged from his palm and gently washed away the dirt and bloodstains on Mu Tianjiao's face. He then carried her and disappeared from the room with Hong Tailong. The two of them appeared in a valley not far from the Four Links Chamber of Commerce. They could see traces of a fight, but the two of them did not pay too much attention to it. They flashed into the air and looked at the town that was almost in ruins. The entire town was like a dead land with not a single living person in sight. When the two of them arrived at the dilapidated Four Links Chamber of Commerce, they discovered a troublesome matter. Where was the grave of Mu Tianjiao's mother? Fortunately, the two of them found Nan Tianlong, who was struggling at death's door and had lost an arm. If they didn't rescue him in time, he would probably be dead. Hong Tailong quickly performed the rescue, and it took a while for Nan Tianlong to recover. However, Hong Tailong secretly transmitted his voice. His injuries are too severe. I'm helping to keep him alive, but he won't be able to hold on for long. Ask whatever you want to ask. Nan Tianlong, on the other hand, stared blankly at Mu Tianjiao, who was in Yu Qianzhou's embrace, and two streams of tears flowed down his cheeks. When the demonic path appeared, too many people died. Yu Qianzhou was already numb to it. He could only sigh and say, Nan Tianlong. Mu Tianjiao's last wish was to be buried together with her mother. Where is her mother's grave? Nan Tianlong whimpered and said vaguely, 50 miles to the north in the flower field. Yu Qianzhou carried Mu Tianjiao and turned to leave. As a result, Hong Tailong's hand on Nan Tianlong's back loosened, and Nan Tianlong could no longer breathe. He fell to the ground with a thud. Without turning his head, Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, Bring him along. The two of them carried Nan Tianlong to a place 50 miles to the north. In the flower field there were two tombs side by side. When Yu Qianzhou landed and saw Mu Bing's name on the tombstone on the left, he knew they had arrived. Yu Qianzhou used the earth art to build a grave beside the tombstone on the right. He then used the metal art to cast a golden coffin and placed Mu Tianjiao inside. After covering the coffin, he buried Nan Tianlong beside Mu Bing before helping the two of them erect tombstones. Before leaving, Yu Qianzhou found a pine tree sapling from a nearby mountain and planted it beside Mu Tianjiao's grave. He used the wood art to make the pine tree grow rapidly into a huge tree to shelter Mu Tianjiao from the wind and rain. After doing all this, he held onto Mu Tianjiao's tombstone and stood there for a long time. Then he left with Hong Tailong. He did not say a single word from the beginning to the end. In Utopia's military camp, Yu Qianzhou stood on the platform and looked down at Jin Tailong, Hutu, and Qing Tian. It was unknown who had been kind enough to throw a woman's clothes for Qing Tian to wear. I have some questions to ask you. You'd better answer me honestly and you might have a chance to live. Yu Qianzhou did not waste any time. He looked at the three trembling people and asked, Did Wenrui leak the secret to three knights when he attacked the realm of the Divine Ruin? Yes. Jin Tailong and Qing Tian answered immediately. Qing Tian added, Yan Zhuixing is Wenrui's master. Buddha's face stiffened. He really did not know about this. Demon Eye Ecstasy. It seems like Wenrui has always been controlled by Yan Zhuixing. Yu Qianzhou nodded. His hands were clenched into fists behind his back. Right now he only hated himself. He regretted not listening to Zhang Peng's words in a moment of soft-heartedness, causing the entire army to be annihilated. His sin was unforgivable. It's not time for the realm of the Divine Ruin to open yet. How did three knights get in? Yu Qianzhou said in a gloomy tone. Huda's face became miserable again. He still did not know about this. Jin Tailong lowered his head guiltily. In the end, Qing Tian Great Devil King sold him out on the spot. She pointed at him and said loudly, Demon King three knights did not know the method to enter the realm of the Divine Ruin. It was Jin Tailong who suggested that Demon King three knights go to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. Jin Tailong even personally accompanied three knights to the ancient forest. Only then did three knights have the method to open the realm of the Divine Ruin? Jin Tailong looked at Qing Tian with resentment and immediately knelt down in front of Yu Qianzhou. He hurriedly explained, I had no choice. Yu Qianzhou expressionlessly looked at him and said word by word, in other words, the method to enter the realm of the Divine Ruin was leaked by Mu Yuanzi. Since you went to the ancient forest with three knights, then tell me everything in detail. You cannot hide anything. Otherwise you will die a horrible death. If you don't believe me, you can try. Jin Tailong was eager to push all responsibility away. He immediately told the story of how he and Demon King three knights went to the ancient forest to find Mu Yuanzi. At the same time, he emphasized that it was three knights who forced him to go with them. He did not say a single word when he got there, and Mu Yuanzi's attitude towards him was very bad. It seemed like he wanted to tell Yu Qianshou that he, 3 knights, and Mu Yuanzi had always been at odds with each other. However, he had no way of proving that he and Yu Qianshou were on the same side. After learning what had happened, Yu Qianshou was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. That old guy could clearly hide in the Wood Killer Sea without any worries. As long as he didn't come out, Demon King 3 knights couldn't do anything to him. However, he didn't have any self-respect, and thought that it had nothing to do with him even if everyone outside died. Yu Qianshou immediately shouted angrily towards the distance. Mu Yuanzi, do you really think that you are the local tyrant of the 3 realms and no one dares to touch you? Others can't enter the Wood Killer Sea, but I can come and go as I please. Just you wait. His voice reverberated, filled with resentment. It's not worth getting angry with someone like that. We can slowly deal with them. Hong Tailong coughed, reminding him how to deal with the 3. Yu Qianshou suddenly stared at the 3 and sneered, Jin Tailong, stay. The others will be temporarily locked up. Hearing that, Jin Tailong immediately begged for his life, kneeling and kowtowing. In order to survive, he would do anything. Usually, such people were the most dangerous. Zhang Peng quickly brought his men and escorted Ho Tu and Qing Tian away. Before they left, the 2 of them rejoiced and looked at the crying Jin Tailong with a pitiful gaze. When the other 2 couldn't see what was happening here, Yu Qianshou gave Hong Tailong a meaningful glance. Hong Tailong flashed behind Jin Tai and slammed his palm onto Jin Tai's head. Jin Tai's head instantly exploded, causing golden dust to fill the sky and drift in all directions with the wind. It was as if the entire utopia had turned into a world of golden dust. Even the people from Misty Palace flashed outside, looking at the beautiful golden world far away. It was even more dazzling than fireworks. An hour later, all the flying golden powder had fallen down, and the surrounding area of tens of miles had become a dazzling golden field under the sunlight. Hong Tailong held a wriggling white ball of light in his palm. He immediately laughed and said, Jin Tailong, stop resisting pointlessly. Once this old dragon erases the memories of your primordial spirit, all the grudges between us will be written off. His 2 palms quickly hugged the white ball of light, and when the white ball of light completely stopped wriggling, he tossed it onto the general selection stage. Holding the white ball of light, Yu Qianshou opened his mouth and sucked it into his stomach like a whale drawing water. Then he quickly sat cross-legged on the general selection stage and closed his eyes. However, his eyes were closed peacefully, making him look like a lifelike statue. Below the stage there was a finger-thick golden stick. Yu Qianshou stretched out his 5 claws, and it immediately flashed into his hand. Following his will, it quickly turned into a golden stick with a balanced length and thickness. It was Qintai's golden cloud stick. This thing already has spirituality. As long as it is nurtured in a certain environment, it will probably become a second gold spirit in many years. Yu Qianshou held the golden cloud stick in his hand and examined it. He immediately understood its attributes. Then he casually tossed it and it stabbed into the ground beside Qinti's statue. Qinti's statue actually reached out a hand and grabbed it. It stood there motionlessly, like a guardian god in golden armor in a utopia military camp. Yu Qianshou then carefully examined the changes in his cultivation base. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Qinti's cultivation base has already reached the mid-stage minor god stage. After my ascendant immortal cultivation base fused with it, it actually did not grow at all. Looks like my original cultivation base is really not worth mentioning compared to Qinti's. That's natural. The higher the cultivation base, the greater the gap between each level. Similarly, it's harder to improve. It's not as simple as 1 + 1. Hong Tailong laughed and made an analogy. This is also the reason why an expert can deal with many experts with slightly lower cultivation base. Zhang Peng, who was silently listening to their conversation behind the stage, finally understood what had happened to his master. Immediately, he flashed to the front of the stage and congratulated, "Congratulations, master." Yu Qianshou nodded with a beaming smile and said, "Now we can bring Huta here. I'll help them get out of this abyss of suffering." Hong Tailong clicked his tongue on one side and shook his head. Then he flashed away from the stage to make preparations. Yes. Zhang Peng quickly accepted the order and left. Not long after, he brought Hutu, who had a nervous expression on her face, over. Hong Tailong did not say a word of nonsense. Taking advantage of the fact that Hutu's cultivation base was sealed and could not fight back, He went behind Hutu and slapped her head cleanly. Boom. A sound like the collapse of a mountain was heard. Yellow dust was set off and spread out in all directions. Hong Tailong dispersed the surrounding yellow dust and held a yellow light ball that was wriggling rapidly in his hand. He directly erased the memory of Hutu's primordial spirit. When the yellow light ball stopped wriggling completely, he threw it to Yu Qianqiu. As soon as Yu Qianqiu caught it, he immediately swallowed it into his stomach without hesitation. He quickly closed his eyes and sat cross-legged. As soon as the yellow light ball entered his dantian, a bit of its essence turned into Hutu's appearance. His eyes lit up when he saw the yellow crystal bead. He could not wait to grab it and swallow it. His body immediately flashed with light and he sat cross-legged on the spot where the yellow crystal bead used to be. This time, because Yu Qianqiu already had the cultivation base of the small god middle stage, it was not difficult for him to control Hutu's cultivation base. Coupled with his previous experience, it could be said that he was very familiar with the process. Hong Tailong, who was standing below the stage, saw that he did not need any more help and was happy to be at ease. Inside the misty palace, when Lan Feng, who was lying on the bed, suddenly opened his eyes. Blue light shot out from his eyes. Under the powerful energy of the blue sea essence, when Lanfeng's injuries were almost healed in a few days, there was no doubt that the blue sea essence was magical. When Lanfeng's body was filled with a large amount of blue sea essence, he did not use the blue sea essence to cleanse his muscles and marrow like others did. Instead, he fused a large amount of blue sea essence with his body without knowing why. It could be said that when Lanfeng now had an immortal body, as long as his consciousness did not collapse, he could be reborn again even if his bones were turned into ashes. This was also the reason why he could resurrect after being killed by the demonic god. Seeing that he had woken up, Lu Yanqing, who had been waiting by his side, immediately hugged him and examined him. After finding that he was fine, she kept muttering to herself, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault. I should not have agreed to let you go out and take risks. Otherwise you would not have been injured." When Lanfeng's blue eyes looked at her quietly, he reached out and stroked her hair, saying, "I believe you. You're not wrong." Although the words spoken were words of love, the tone was still cold, and there was a faint trace of the charm of metal rubbing against each other. "I can't let you go on like this." Lu Yanqing suddenly got up and looked at him with tears in her eyes. She bit her lip and hesitated for a long time. Then, with a trembling voice, she grabbed his hand and asked, "If I let you disperse the huge energy in your body, would you be willing?" When Lan Feng sat up straight and looked at her quietly with his blue eyes, he nodded and said, "Whatever you say, I'll do it. But at the same time, it will also disperse your cultivation. You've gone through untold hardships to get to where you are today. Are you really willing?" Lu Yanqing's voice trembled. Her hand holding his hand was also trembling. "I believe you." When Lanfeng's tone and expression did not have a trace of hesitation, large tears fell from Lu Yanqing's eyes. She buried her head and choked for a long time, saying repeatedly, "It's all my fault. Don't cry. I don't know why, but seeing you cry makes my heart ache." When Lan Feng held her face with both hands. "No." Chapter 1203. The water god of the divine world is the water spirit? She's one of the ancient gods? Yu Qianqiu was startled and his facial muscles twitched as he said, "Devouring the ancient gods? I don't have such good teeth. Her cultivation must be at the late ancient god stage, right? To be able to become an ancient god, her cultivation is naturally not simple." Hong Tailong shook his head and said, "She definitely has the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. As for whether it is the late ancient god stage, I don't know." "What do you mean?" Yu Qianqiu was stunned. Zhang Peng, who was at the side, also pricked up his ears to listen carefully. This level of information wasn't something that could be heard at any time. Usually there wasn't even a place to inquire about it, so he naturally couldn't miss it. "Let me explain it to you this way." Hong Tailong pointed to the sky and said, "A long time ago, those great ancient gods already had the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. It can be said that they are the first people in this world to have the cultivation of the late ancient god stage. However, there are two people with higher cultivation and they are Great God Yi and War God. Even my coiling dragon ancestor isn't a match for them. Therefore, I suspect that there is a higher cultivation than the late ancient god stage. The cultivation of Tao is likely to be far beyond the late ancient god stage. Otherwise, how could he suppress the gods? Therefore, I also don't know how high the cultivation of the current water god is. In fact, other than those ancient gods, I reckon that no one knows the cultivation of the ancient gods. You know what I mean, right? Yu Qianqiu silently digested the contents of his words. After a long time, he slowly sighed and said, "In that case, the demon god who can defeat the other ancient gods must have a cultivation that is beyond our imagination. To defeat him, even if I can devour the water god, I'm afraid I'm still not a match for him." Cough cough. Hong Tailong coughed twice and said, "You're thinking too far ahead. Against a person at that level, even if you add 100,000 Yu Qianqiu together, it still wouldn't be enough to kill him. Do you think that the person who is known as the Divine Realm's #1 expert is just joking around? Let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's settle the matter in front of us first. What about that Azure Sky Tree demon?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and waved at Zhang Peng, signaling him to bring Qing Tian over. Zhang Peng accepted the order and left. After a while, Qing Tian followed behind him leisurely. She seemed to have dressed up meticulously. She was wearing a simple dress, but her waist, breasts, and buttocks were all over the place. She was curvaceous and graceful. Her hair was also carefully combed, making her face look very beautiful. However, when the great devil king saw Hutu and Qin Tai, who were motionless like two statues on the square, a trace of panic flashed across her face. However, she still maintained her best state and bowed to Yu Qianqiu. After that, she stood there seductively and looked at Yu Qianqiu affectionately. Every frown and movement of her eyes was very attractive. Yu Qianqiu and Hong Tailong looked at each other in dismay. They knew that this woman was still making her final struggle. She wanted to use the only asset she had to save her life. Yu Qianqiu coughed and said, "Qing Tian, it would be a pity to kill such a great beauty like you." Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng immediately looked at him. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. They suspected that he had taken a fancy to her. When the great devil king heard this, her eyes lit up. She immediately twisted her snake-like waist and knelt down. She covered her face and said, "I hope that my lord will take pity on me and give me another chance. I will definitely do my best to repay you. I will definitely not disappoint my lord." Her appearance was really pitiful. "I also can't bear to kill you. How about this? I will give you another chance." Yu Qianqiu pointed at Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng and said, "If you can make one of them fall in love with you, I can be merciful." Hong Tailong and Zhang Peng cried out at the same time. The great devil king looked left and right, then looked at Yu Qianqiu's serious expression. She then slowly stood up and walked toward Hong Tailong. In the end, Hong Tailong's eyes widened like a bull's eyes. He said sternly, "If you dare to come any closer, I will kill you with a single palm strike." The coquettish expression on Qing Tian's face froze. She turned around and weakly walked toward Zhang Peng. She bit her lip and looked like a little wife who had been wronged. However, Zhang Peng was even more direct. He coldly harumphed and said, "Scram." Qing Tian suddenly didn't know what to do. Her eyes turned as she tried to think of a solution. On the stage, Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "Since the two of you don't fancy her, I will reluctantly accept her." As he said this, he had already appeared in front of her and reached out to hug her waist. Joy flashed in the great devil king's eyes. She took the opportunity to lean into his embrace and sob. She sobbed and said, "Thank you, Lord, for not killing me." However, she didn't know that she had met someone who didn't mean what he said. Yu Qianqiu hugged her and raised his hand to slap her head. A layer of yellow soil quickly wrapped around her. Hong Tailong's and Zhang Peng's expressions twitched. They watched as the clear sky demon king who was wrapped in yellow soil, slowly shrank. Suddenly the yellow soil exploded, and a yellow pearl landed in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Yu Qianqiu coldly pinched the bead and looked at it. He said to himself in a low voice, "Small god middle stage earth soul mystic weapon." He looked like he could kill without batting an eyelid. He casually tossed the bead onto the ground and it immediately sank. Not long later the ground trembled and many large cracks appeared. A mound of earth rose up and a huge earth person walked out. However, as the earth person's footsteps trembled, there was also the faint sound of thunder. The three of them abruptly raised their heads and looked toward the sky in the distance. Hong Tailong said in astonishment, "Could it be that the earth soul mystic weapon can communicate with the heaven and earth aspect?" Yu Qianqiu frowned and closed his eyes. The various scenes in Utopia flashed through his mind. After locking onto the source of the thunderbolts, Yu Qianqiu suddenly opened his eyes and bellowed furiously, "What is that stupid woman doing now? What's going on?" Hong Tailong asked, puzzled. Zhang Peng was also at a loss. He didn't know who the stupid woman was. We'll know once we take a look. Yu Qianqiu pointed at the huge earth person, and it immediately sank into the ground. The ground quickly became flat, and a yellow bead landed in his hand. He waved his hand and the three of them disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already on an island in the Utopia Sea. There were snow-blue thunderbolts crisscrossing in the clear sky. The source of the thunderbolts didn't come from the sky, but from Wen Lanfeng's body. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng was kneeling on the highest peak of the island. His hands were deeply inserted into the soil, and his face was filled with pain. From time to time he would raise his head and let out an extremely dull ha-ha sound. The sound was roaring in his throat, but he tried his best not to let it out. He was like a beast that had been inhumanely abused, and he was clearly forcefully suppressing the endless pain to not let out a sound. His face was flushed red and the veins on his neck were bulging. His lips had been bitten off by himself and blue blood was dripping down. Under his tattered white robe, his muscles were undulating. It was because he was in too much pain, and his muscles were so tense that they were trembling violently. It was unknown how much pain a person had to endure to torture himself to such a horrifying state. The source of the snow-blue thunderbolts that filled the sky came from Wen Lanfeng, who was kneeling on the ground. Majestic energy was constantly released from his body, turning into thunderbolts that dissipated in the air. The scene was shocking, but it was extremely tragic. At the foot of the mountain, Lu Yanqing also knelt on the ground, looking at Wen Lanfeng who was in pain on the top of the mountain, crying inconsolably. Her silver teeth had also bitten through her lips, and her lower jaw was dripping with blood. Her fingers were pinched into the flesh of her palms, and blood was dripping between her fingers. The three people who suddenly appeared stood behind Lu Yanqing, and each of them looked at the scene with a moved expression. At a glance, the three of them knew that Wen Lanfeng was dissipating his cultivation. There was nothing crueler than this for cultivators, especially experts who had not obtained their cultivation easily. It was more painful than killing them, and almost no one was willing to do this. The surroundings of the island were stirred up by the release of such a huge amount of energy, and the waves were surging violently. Zhang Peng turned his head to look at his master, who was standing in the wind with a solemn expression. Hong Tailong also suddenly turned his head, looked at Yu Qianqiu and said in a low voice, "We can't let him continue. His cultivation is very useful to us. I will think of a way to make him stop." Yu Qianqiu, whose green robes fluttered in the wind, suddenly reached out and pressed his hand on Hong Tailong's chest. He shook his head slightly and said, "He has already helped me enough. He even died once for me. I will not force him to do anything else. I cannot rely on others forever. I will do the rest myself. Since it is his own decision, as long as he does not regret it, I have nothing to say." Sigh. What a pity. Hong Tailong stomped his feet inside. The gruesome scene lasted for 10 days and 10 nights. Yu Qianqiu and the other two watched silently. Such a huge commotion had attracted the attention of almost everyone in Utopia. When the men and women saw what was happening, they were left speechless. After 10 days and 10 nights, the snow-blue thunderbolt released from Wen Lanfeng's body finally disappeared. It was unimaginable how powerful Wen Lanfeng's cultivation had become after releasing such powerful energy for 10 days and 10 nights in a row. However, Wen Lanfeng finally collapsed powerlessly on the top of the mountain, motionless. "Wen Lanfeng!" Lu Yanqing shouted at the top of her voice, which had become hoarse from crying. She flashed to the top of the mountain and sat on the ground with the unconscious Wen Lanfeng in her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Yu Qianqiu slowly let out a breath and flashed to the top of the mountain. The others also followed silently to see what was going on. At this moment, Wen Lanfeng's snow-blue hair had turned black again. His thick snow-blue eyebrows had also returned to black. Red blood flowed out of his bitten lip. The light blue cloud pattern between his eyebrows had also disappeared, and he had returned to his original appearance. His eyes were tightly shut, and his face was deathly pale. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.